Okay, so unpopular opinion, I actually miss this part of the pandemic. I live in Yosemite National Park. No visitors were allowed in during the initial lockdown, so it was only the employees who lived in the park that got to enjoy spring that year. No one on the mist trail on a fine spring day in May, no cars at Tunnel View for sunrise, no gummies at Swan Slab, no careless influencers trampling the meadows. The birds were loud, the bears were comfortable, the dogwood blooms didn't get picked and ruined. I miss that. I miss having the valley to myself. It's so selfish, but man, what an experience. The quiet. In the big city where I live, there were various lakes and ponds around, and during the pandemic I could hear the frogs chirping like crazy in the evenings instead of traffic. It's really sad how it could be described as otherworldly. It should be this-worldly. Empty streets. I had to drive into my office in Manhattan one day in April 2020 because I had an issue with my work laptop. 70 miles per hour through the Holland Tunnel, and I parked on the street in front of the building. I doubt anyone will experience that again. It looked like a movie set for a post-apocalyptic zombie flick. The lack of traffic was nice. Post-pandemic effect was brutal though. Not sure if we'd gotten used to the light traffic or just that many people forgot how to drive. The pace of life almost felt like how life should be. Less traffic, less crowded streets, less noise. More time to appreciate people at home. Some jobs could commute. Even people who had a variety of opinions on the pandemic details seemed to have a community of sorts within their said beliefs. It just feels like modern society is chaotic for no good reason, and the pandemic slowed things down for a short minute there. It really showed the fakeness of modern life. Waking up and going into the office was totally unnecessary. Yet this single action is how most people define their adult lives. I tried to explain this to my mother yesterday. Modern life doesn't actually feel good. Humans aren't designed to wake up and immediately throw themselves into tasks that accomplish nothing more than basic survival to allow us to continue to work. We're meant to experience all that our wonderful planet has to offer. Yet 99% of the population will spend almost every waking moment slaving away, some of them quite literally. Generally, I agree. I'm of the opinion that even though the pandemic was rough, it really did have a big old silver lining in how it revolutionized the way a lot of people worked for the better. It couldn't do it for everyone, yet, but for those of us schlubbing away in offices, we came out better. Okay, this is a weird one, but clean supermarket baskets. Actually, just clean stuff in general. The moment it was no longer mandated, everything went back to being filthy. You'd think there'd be minimum standards of hygiene in places that sell produce. I mean, I'm pretty sure a corner grocer would get in trouble for having baskets as gross as Woolworth's baskets always are. I was in food service during the pandemic. It was hilarious to see how all of a sudden management took sick workers seriously. It didn't even have to be COVID. People with colds or the flu all of a sudden were given time off with no questions asked. If you've ever worked food service, it's alarming the amount of sick people around your food. What's even funnier is I personally saw the rise and fall of that behavior. It took about 18 months for management to go back to the whole, "Oh, you're sick? We'll need you to be here anyways" kind of mentality. You know what I miss? Being 4 years younger. Mid-20s just flew away. Yeah, I feel really bad for the teenagers. They went in as kids and came out as adults with little sense of direction. Not feeling crap for sitting in an apartment all day and night, with no FOMO. People keeping their frickin' distance. I mean, it took a bit, but now people are right back to hovering over your shoulder in line. Oh, I loved that. Why the frick do people breathe down your neck in lines? It doesn't make it go any faster. I hate grocery shopping once again. Not having to talk to people, and having time to do extra stuff around the house. I miss having 6 feet of personal space. I miss our planet Earth getting a break for the first time in a long time. In BC, we had whales return to regions that they'd left long ago, and births went up. The Venetian canals ran with visibly clear water. Dolphins around the world went up rivers, estuaries, and waterways that they hadn't visited in decades. It was eye-opening. There was a wildlife documentary called The Year the Earth Changed about this. It's great and devastating at the same time. Working from home, I really liked it, to be honest. I miss my dead family members. Oof, me too. And not being able to celebrate their lives with a funeral. How about common courtesy if people were ill? People staying home or masking up when sick. Now we're back to disgustingly ill people hacking and coughing all over with zero regard for others. It's gross. My dog Björn. He died January 2021, but I got to spend every day of 2020 at home with him. You know what I miss? Being left the heck alone. I miss nothing. Working for the ambulance, there was so much stress for such a long time. I didn't see family for ages. Lots of people immensely sick didn't receive the treatment they needed because of that pandemic. I was alone in the flat for such a long time, it frickin' sucked. I was working in an ER during the pandemic and have so much respect for what you did. Working in EMS has always been hard, but the pandemic took everything up a notch. Thank you for what you did and continue to do for your community. Time. I had time. I was just starting to understand myself, as I'm an addict, and that time gave me the ability to actually look inward and make strong, necessary changes to essentially grow up and become a better person. Nothing. I was an essential worker, mail carrier, and I worked my butt off. No extra pay either. The drive home from work was about the only joy of being an essential at that time because the streets were post-apocalyptically empty. Yeah, I was an essential worker as well in Arkansas, where the general mentality was that COVID was a hoax. We got overworked while other businesses went under without the less crowded public areas mentioned in the other comments. I'm surprised I haven't seen this mentioned earlier, but not getting sick and finally feeling like anyone cared about my immunosuppression. I've been on immunosuppressive medication to control my ankylosing spondylitis since I was 18. I'm supposed to skip doses while I'm unwell. During COVID, it was finally normal to take precautions like wearing a medical mask in public and not being forced to attend crowded work meetings where half the people were hacking and coughing. I literally didn't get sick once in 2 years until being forced to return to office, and then I got COVID within 2 weeks. Wouldn't you know it, skipping a few doses every 1 to 2 months due to getting sick actually had a huge impact on my quality of life. During COVID, I had 0 flare-ups while pre- and post-COVID. I've had several scary flare-up episodes causing weeks of agonizing pain. It's also nice that people pretended to care about immunocompromised folks. My friends would go out of their way to cancel plans if they felt unwell. Just 2 months ago, we were hanging out with some fairly close friends, and 2 hours in, one of them admitted, "Oh yeah, I've had a fever for 3 days, but I thought I could tough it out with Advil." And sure enough, a few days later, I got sick. So I totally sympathize with all of the horrible downsides of the pandemic, but it was basically the only time I was able to get an upper hand on my chronic disease and not feel pressured by society to just suck it up and deal with communicable diseases. Permission to be a homebody without judgment. Masks on sick people. Social distance. Why are you breathing down my neck in the self-checkout line? Back up. It's the same wait time either way. The answer's nothing. I worked frontline healthcare and I wondered if I was going to get sick and die or kill my whole family too until the vaccine came out. At no point did I get a raise, a bonus, a vacation, or unemployment. Hey, but my workplace put up a "Thank you nurses" paper banner. Great. Oh, and all of your neighbors banged pots and pans as a thank you while you were trying to sleep, right? I'm not medical staff, but my job takes place in a hospital. I'm in administration. I saw how ragged the nurses were being run and I felt so bad for them. The return of wildlife and cleaner air and face masks. I miss the illusion that the majority of people cared about others. Peace and quiet. Actually, having no stress and being able to just exist and mind your own business. Being rested and getting enough sleep for the first and probably the last times. And then not working for 5.5 months. That was nice. Damn, you had no stress during the pandemic? I lost 10% of my body weight and developed stress-induced insomnia that I'm only just now starting to recover from. Yeah, it does seem like there were 2 distinct experiences for those of us who lived in places where there was serious quarantine. It probably comes down to a mix of whether you were an introvert or extrovert, what kind of work you did, and just how terminally online and updated on world affairs you were. Luckily, I was introverted as heck, I loved gaming, and basically lived in my own little world, so it was mitigated fairly well for me. Society as a whole has gotten a lot meaner since then, so I guess I missed the brief period where we almost all got along. The quiet. It's like the Earth stood still for a while. The Earth didn't, civilization did. The natural world tried to reclaim a little bit of its domain when we had to stop destroying it for a moment. I miss pretty much everything except the people dying. Staying home and not being judged for it. Also, masks, because I like hiding my face. Social distancing, or stimulus checks. Stay away from me and give me the money. It was a good time to be alive. Nothing. I was in change of safety for an essential public service. We were told we weren't allowed to close down, but also got 0 assistance in obtaining PPE, relief workers, childcare, or priority status for vaccinations. I was constantly dealing with angry, irrational members of the public, anxious and depressed and angry co-workers. I had zero medical or public health training, but I had to write safety protocols and make decisions knowing that if I made a mistake, lots of people might die. Because of staff shortages, I had to do my regular full-time job, plus all the additional work of managing COVID safety, plus take over another department's work, normally done by 3 full-time employees. I did not get paid any extra. But I was told to do all of my paperwork at home, which was awful since I shared a tiny apartment with 2 roommates and literally didn't even have a desk at home. 4 months into lockdown, my cat got cancer and died. I then had to help evacuate my grandmother and cousins from a wildfire. Oh, and my doctor retired, so I couldn't get my medication refilled for about a year. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. Don't forget to subscribe to Am I the Genius? The beginning, when we were all in it together, and then it devolved into the whole mask or no mask and vaccine and anti-vax bullcrap. Ugh. Tiger King and Animal Crossing New Horizons. That game was like Xanax during the first few months of lockdown. No traffic, remote work, cuddling my dog anytime I wanted, distance from strangers, and the excuse to decline invites. I miss staying at home and not having to interact with people. People being more considerate of one another. Now it feels like every man for themselves. Not having to see or engage with people. People wearing masks in public places or staying home when they were sick. Now it's back to people openly coughing in your face. I went to a GP clinic a few months ago. I was sat in the waiting area when the man behind me did the dirtiest, phlegmiest cough on my neck. I felt the air and the spit all over my neck as he coughed. I've never gotten up from a chair and moved so quickly in my life. People are frickin' gross, man. Hand sanitizer at gas pumps. Pandemic or not, some people just don't wash their hands. Not being obliged to shake hands. You could just nod at each other and go on. I still do this after I saw stats about how many of us actually wash our hands, much less how many of us wash our hands correctly. Water, soap, and then water, people. At the peak of the pandemic, my second daughter was born, and my first was 2 years old. I still remember having to have my temperature taken every time I ran out to the car to get something and return to the hospital. It's probably selfish and messed up on a deeper level, but something about protecting your babies during a time like that helps to seal the bond. It felt like it was us against the world, and we just explored the beautiful park near our house every day in our little insulated bubble. I'm going to go ahead and say I really don't miss anything from the pandemic. Oh, I miss people staying a few feet away from me in line. Being furloughed with my employment pay is probably the closest I'll get to feeling what retirement is like. It's completely okay to just be. The rat race paused for a while. There wasn't stress to go places or do things you didn't want to. The pressure to prove myself was just off. The lack of smog gave us glimpses of the mountains, skylines, and countryside vistas previously hidden by said same smog. People wearing masks. Like, if you're sick, just wear one. Be thoughtful of others. If you're not sick, then fine, don't wear a mask. But my God, I'm so tired of people coming into the store I work at, coughing their lungs out and talking about how they don't feel good and spreading their disgusting sickness everywhere. I should add I was an essential worker, so I never got the time off. I was incredibly overworked and people were either very nice to me or the rudest possible. I worked at a grocery store and people either thanked me, why, or they accused me of keeping all of the toilet paper and bleach in the back for ourselves. I miss having optimism that life would get better post-pandemic. Somehow things have gotten even worse and Elon frickin' Musk is making decisions that have messed things up even more for me and my income. The pandemic gave me severe depression and anxiety, so not really much. I'm still dealing with the after effects to this day. Getting paid to stay home and do essentially nothing. Spending tons of time with my kids. Also, my kids loved that the school gave us school food for them to eat at home, so I miss them being excited for us to go pick up the weekly school food. As a lunch lady during that time, it warms my heart hearing that at least someone was excited for the food. I miss how, for a while, it felt like we were all in this weird collective confusion together. I miss working from home. My husband's company hit them with a return to office order for next year. Nobody on his team is from the same regional office. They were hired during the pandemic without location being taken into account because of the work from home. They're all having to drive an hour or more to the nearest regional office to sit on frickin' Zoom meetings with each other exactly like they do now. It is so damned stupid. That fat check I got at the end of it after having gotten furloughed from my job and not collecting the pay bi-weekly or even monthly, but collecting it all at once when lockdown was over. Other than that, I was mentally hanging on by a string. I legitimately felt like the world would never be the same again and like it was ending. Life had a very anxious feel for me existentially. For that, I don't know how some of you were at so much peace. The money I was making delivering DoorDash and Uber Eats, I was working my butt off while the gas was the cheapest in 15 years. I built up my savings account, paid off my debt, and felt financially secure for once. I mean, this is a truly unique angle. I frankly would never have expected anyone to seize the opportunity to make a greater than normal amount of money being a DoorDash or Fedora driver, to be honest. I thought it was exclusively a profession used to exploit desperate people, or at best something that a few people did in their spare time. So I'm actually really glad to see that some people used it as a net positive in their lives. God damn you guys, frickin' nothing. I worked in healthcare. I got to work 80+ hours a week, and in my flipping minuscule time away from work, I got to see people frickin' whining about being home. I honestly hope that every single person who complained about time at home gets horrendous paper cuts in their finger and toe webbing for the rest of their lives. Fudge all of you. I'm right there with you, buddy. I got frickin' COVID from a patient before we even knew what it was. Thought it was weird flu, and that gave me renal failure. Put me on dialysis, but I've got young kids and bills to pay and the hospital doesn't run itself. So I put on my big boy pants and went back to work. I finally got my transplant this year, so it turned out okay, but frick. What's crazy about the pandemic is that instead of it dividing us, I feel like it brought us together. My family was closer than ever. We quarantined together. I got to live with my boyfriend. We had a great time just avoiding everything together. I miss it. Now, my sister lives across the country and I'm long distance with my boyfriend for at least a couple of years. And now I'm lonely. I was an essential worker, so I miss everybody thanking our essential heroes for a solid week until that went away. It was also cool to be deemed essential, yet hazard pay wasn't in the equation whatsoever. No social obligations. I feel like I was a completely different person. I was a new mum with a 10-month-old. I had all of this time to bond with my baby, and it was amazing. Then, as he got older, I had all of this time to prepare activities and really be intentional with our time together. It was really nice. Margaritas to go. I miss our neighborhood hangouts. There are 5 houses on our street, and we all used to meet at the cul-de-sac every Sunday afternoon at 6 feet apart and enjoy each other's company. The group spanned from little kids to empty nesters. Once everything went back to normal, the hangouts stopped. No traffic, but also normalizing wearing masks if you're ill at all. I still personally mask up when I'm sick, but I'd really like it if more people did it too. I miss when people took it seriously. The slowed down pace of life. More wild animals, less pollution, and working at home. I miss working from home being actively encouraged and fully supported. I miss people being respectful and keeping 6 feet away from strangers. And I miss people being kind to one another and finding ways to support one another as a community. Wearing masks so that if you looked like crap, nobody could see you. But today's the 4-year anniversary of my husband's death from COVID, and I miss him so much. Having an excuse to turn down invites to any kind of social gathering. Remote work without the threat of return to office, and not having to be around buttholes almost everywhere I go. The bullies at my workplace just couldn't do their thing. We were all working from home, and when we had to do anything on Zoom, it was all recorded, which is a bully's nightmare. They couldn't corner anyone in their break room, they couldn't help themselves to somebody else's lunch, they couldn't alleviate their boredom by making somebody else feel uncomfortable. The poor souls. The only thing they could do was their actual job. By the way, we are still in a pandemic, guys. Only the emergency status has dropped. We're actually in our 10th wave. Higher numbers than 73% of the entire pandemic. To answer the question, I miss when everyone masked. As somebody who's bedbound by COVID, going to doctors to try and find help is so risky, because nobody seems to care to protect each other anymore. This answer was written in December 2024. Nothing. It was difficult. I want that time added back onto my lifespan because it was just one big bullcrap instance of suspended animation and the worst of humanity. Having foxes come into my little garden in the night. I still see them in the early hours if I'm out running, but it's like they had free rein during the start of lockdown and they made the most of it. Beautiful creatures. Lockdown, home office, the state being forced to change the crappy slavery-exploiting capitalist system for a little while. You know, school firearm tragedies didn't happen over Zoom. I think what we're learning from all of these is that the pandemic was an introvert's paradise and an extrovert's nightmare. Reasonable prices before all of the inflation took over from newly created unbacked trillions of US dollars. Sitting one person per pair of seats on the bus. I hate it when someone sits next to me. Empty streets. I got to explore so much on my bicycle, and it was surreal riding past a lot of places that would normally be bustling with big crowds. You know, it was wild to watch nature begin to take the urban areas back so quickly when humans weren't around. What's a bad thing everyone should experience at least once? For many men, a finger in the butt. But for good reasons. Get your prostates checked, guys. Being humiliated for being a butthole. Some people need this to happen more than once. Poverty. It will make you appreciate what you have at least a little. Everyone should experience firsthand how money can destroy close relationships and how quickly it can happen. I was dating a girl who had a lifelong friend with bad credit, like really bad. She wanted to buy a new car but couldn't get approved for a loan and asked my friend to co-sign. Then it turned out her credit was so bad she couldn't even use a co-signer. They wouldn't even issue a loan with her name anywhere on a form. So she had the idea, "Could you buy the car or get the loan and I'll just make the monthly payments until it's paid off?" I told her, "Don't do this, there's a reason why she has bad credit." Well, she didn't listen and bought the car for her friend. Her friend made exactly one payment to her, and the next month, nothing. She started ditching phone calls, and then we find out she moved out of her apartment. Suddenly, this girl's family, who my friend had known for 15 years, is pretending they don't know where she lives and has no way of getting in contact with her. A couple more weeks and an envelope with half a car payment, 3 weeks late at this point, shows up stuck under my girlfriend's doormat. The next payment comes due, and nothing. So now my girlfriend is making the payments every month on a car she hasn't seen in months. Her friend, who promised to make payments, is a payment and a half behind, and it's only been 3 months. The one thing she listened to me about was she kept a key to the car, so we had the idea we'd find the car and take it, since it was legally and morally her car anyway. So we spent I don't even know how many weeks every night driving around for hours, hitting this girl's hangout spots, friends' houses, family houses, etc., until one night we find the car parked in front of her father's condo. My girlfriend jumped in, took the car and drove it to another friend's house, who was going to put it in his garage for a while until things cooled off. We weren't 2 minutes gone before bad credit chick is blowing up her pager, yeah, it was that long ago, having suddenly remembered her number. Anyway, long story short, this was a lifelong friendship. And this chick barely even hesitated at the chance to steal a frickin' car from someone who was trying to help her. I've been lucky enough that nothing like this has ever happened to me, but I have seen seemingly loving and normal families destroyed overnight in squabbles over money, namely family wills. Money can apparently ruin lifelong relationships, and we should take that into consideration when dealing with that. Minor car accident, so that you understand, even if no one is hurt, how quickly it can happen, how hard the cars jolt on collision, and how much hassle it is to get through insurance. It's happened where 2 drivers have driven into me in the past. I drove with real caution for months afterwards, and I'm extremely attentive to the road as a result. I pretty much totaled my first car when I was 17. No injuries, but it was my fault and I lost my license for 6 months. It wasn't my first offense. Fast forward 30 years and my driving record is spotless since then. While teaching my daughter to drive, I tried to impress upon her the hassle, inconvenience, and embarrassment of even a minor traffic accident, especially if it's your fault. I told her that she'd never truly understand the feeling unless it happened to her. Then a year later, it did. She was cut off by a truck on a wet road and wound up rear-ending him. She was cited for following too close, which was bullcrap, but whatever, and ended up totaling her car. She's mentioned many times since then how her attitude towards driving safety has changed. I'm afraid to say it, but I think in both of our cases, having a minor accident was just the thing we needed to understand emotional driving and avoiding dumb risks and defensive driving. It made us better drivers, although I'd hardly recommend it. I think it's important to get used or ripped off once by a supposed friend. My son, when a teen, would believe anyone. Any story, any hard luck tale. Then came the day a friend sold him fishing poles for way too much money and dropped them off. They didn't have any reels on them. My son was so hurt and teed off. I felt bad for him, but he never forgot the lesson. Be careful who you call a friend. Met this girl, talked to her on the internet for years. Never really went anywhere, but talking or writing to her became a part of my regular routine. For so long it felt like I knew her, even though in reality, of course, I actually didn't. One day she hits me up talking about how she desperately needs money and is looking to sell this gift card someone got her. I think nothing of it and say, sure. I take it home and go online to activate it, at which point I find it was obviously stolen. I go on Facebook and see that she's updated her status. Sucker. Take public transportation. I know a crap ton of people who've never taken it. I personally find it kind of soothing, except when I'm taking the bus home from work in the morning, i.e. right now. If I could drive, I'd be at home and in my bed. Coming from major cities with great public transport, this is so weird to me. I couldn't imagine getting around by car. Having a terrible roommate or flatmate, it really makes you appreciate future living situations, especially with a significant other. The moment of panic and the lingering feeling in the pit of your stomach when you're driving and narrowly avoid what could have been a disaster. Not even necessarily your fault, things like braking for a deer or a car not seeing you in their blind spot and changing lanes into you and you have to hit the horn. Something that reminds you that no matter how much time we spend driving and how easy it usually is, vehicles are freaking dangerous and you don't want to get careless. Something that reminds you why driving deserves your full attention the entire time. I was driving home from college late at night on a 2-lane highway in the middle of nowhere. A huge buck appeared in front of me to the left. I only saw him for literally a tenth of a second. He was in the beginnings of a jump, rearing up on his hind legs, his front hooves over the top of my hood. He jumped clear over my car. Had it not been so dark out, I probably would have seen his ball bag pass right in front of my driver's window. My heart was probably at 170 beats per minute for the next hour afterwards. I don't think I blinked. Spent the entire time scanning everything in my field of view. Longest drive of my life. Being humiliated for behaving like a jerk. Some people need this to happen more than once. Agreed. That moment of self-awareness when you realize, no, you're not being funny, or the other person isn't in the wrong, but you are being a jerk, that's humbling. You learn to be a better person from the experience. Unless someone actually is a jerk, then they just double down and assume everyone else is the jerk. When Borders was closing, they didn't allow returns. This was on numerous giant banners all over the store, so it's not like they were hiding it. There was a long line checking out, and this guy was yelling at the clerk about a $3 CD and moaning about why he couldn't return it if he didn't like it. A normal jerk, whatever. Then he goes, "This is why you people are losing your jobs. You don't know how to keep the customers happy." And several people yelled and chewed him out so badly he dropped his crap and left. Seriously, what the frick, man? I hope I actually helped with that one. This was your informative piece on why not to be a jerk, from the sister channel of Am I the Jerk? And yes, I did write a quarter-page worth of stories purely for a lame gag and a plug for our sister channel. You're welcome. Working in retail and/or fast food service. Working those jobs really changes your perspective on what's an appropriate way to behave in those environments, and shows you that many people have no idea how to behave appropriately in them. Cashier and bagger here, you have no idea just how rude, lazy, inconsiderate, nasty, and just downright mean people can be until you work in a customer service job. It really makes you appreciate genuinely nice people a whole lot more, and shows you just how many people aren't raised right. I can tell stories for days about the crap I see on a daily basis. For example, one time I had a lady complain to my office manager, co-manager, and store manager, I was on a register that day, saying that my customer service was awful and that someone should have trained me better. All because she didn't have enough money to pay for her stuff, so I had to decline her. Luckily, 2 of them saw the whole thing and politely told the lady that she was a moron and I'd done nothing wrong. The next customer in line also saw the whole thing and told them, my managers, that I was the sweetest cashier at the store. Being sick and having someone take care of you teaches you how to take care of others when they're down and the efforts and sacrifices you make. Also, being sick away from home, i.e. no one to take care of you. Once you've lain in a bed sick as a dog all alone, you appreciate everyone who's there for you. A relationship with a superficial or pretentious person. It makes you appreciate humble people even more. My first girlfriend was so standoffish, unaffectionate, and just plain rude. We were together for a year before we stopped talking to each other. At the time, I thought that was just what a relationship was until I met my second girlfriend, who was so incredibly charming, warm, and affectionate. I didn't consider the first relationship as a waste of a year because it made me appreciate my second one so much more. Indifference from complete strangers when you're in a time of need. It seems oddly specific, but can really be translated in many settings, from being stranded and trying to hitchhike home to begging for money for your next meal. Given some time, you realize that a lot of people are real Fs. A lot of them are simply ignoring you completely, and some will go far out of their way to help. It helps you be a better person. Agreed. I got stuck out of town once, and I missed my last bus home, and not one person I stopped would lend me their phone so I could call my mum. I was about 12 or 13 and terrified that I'd have to sleep outside and would probably end up getting stabbed or something. Even then, I remember wondering why the frick nobody would let me use their phone. I'd let a crying adolescent borrow my phone if they needed to call home. In the end, I managed to find an ancient, pea-stained payphone that still worked, and called home with the bus money I had left, but I know I was lucky in that situation. This was about 10 years ago in the Midlands, England, for those asking. I do know that people probably thought I was trying to mug them, so you don't need to tell me. Being at the mercy of someone else after you've done something to deserve getting your butt whooped. I'm not saying that everyone should experience getting bashed, but I think there are a lot of people out there with attitude problems that have never experienced the consequences of their actions. A little fear can be enough to make people think twice before behaving like buttholes to others. Again, I'm not advocating violence, but the stomach plunging into your feet because you know you done effed up by being a tool to someone that isn't taking your crap? That, I think, is a valuable lesson in how not to behave as a human being. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. Failing at something, because after that, you'll grow and be able to 1. Achieve more, and 2. Use it as motivation, before 3. Knowing that failing is okay. Near-death experience. You never really appreciate the finite nature of your own life until you've breathed what you believe to be your last breath, to then have it all go black. You wake up exhilarated like nothing you've ever felt since or before, the air on your skin that you've never realized before, the feeling of air filling your lungs as you breathe, the smells and tastes are all amplified. It lasted for at least a year, and the urge to savor every little thing in life and see all the previous annoyances as petty and meaningless in the grand scheme of things. It also puts into perspective the sheer terror of death, and I believe it gave me a greater level of sympathy for those that aren't as lucky. I think everyone would be a lot less violent and warmongering if they'd felt the emptiness of death. This was one of the important tenets of Heidegger's philosophy. Basically, he was of the opinion that it's uniquely human to come to terms with your own mortality. Most of our lives are spent trying to ignore that fact, or think around it via religion. But to him, that was denying our uniquely human existence. Only through near-death experience or deep, honest introspection does one actually face that their life is finite. I never really thought about religion as a means of avoiding thinking about one's own mortality, but it definitely is for many, I suppose. For the record, it also means a great deal of other things to different people as well. Laying a beloved pet to rest. I had to say goodbye to my best friend of 15 years, my yellow Labrador, this past Monday. Worst day of my life. I don't know if I can ever have another dog, as they'll never measure up to him, and I never want to go through this again. He slept by my bedside every night, and every night I'd reach down to him and pet him before going to sleep. Now, he isn't there. Go and hug your pets, people. I have to say goodbye to my girl, tortoiseshell cat, this next weekend. She has advanced liver cancer, and it's time. She's the most amazing pet I've ever had. I can't imagine the hole that is about to be torn through my family, and that has been torn through yours. I'm sorry for your loss. Pets can be the most amazing friends. Being broke. You appreciate what little you have and what it's like to earn hard-earned money. As someone who's been struggling to find a job for months, this really hits home. It's incredibly demoralizing, and it just makes me feel like there's something wrong with me because no one will give me a job. Especially with the older generation telling me to just hand out CVs, you'll get a job really quickly, because I did. Except they refuse to accept things have changed massively. And most places will literally tell you they don't take CVs in store, and if they're hiring, you have to apply online. For the minimum wage part-time job that 300 people have already applied for in the 2 days it's been online. It sucks. And if you have no experience, you're in even worse luck. Even the most menial, low-skilled jobs won't look at your CV twice if you don't have experience. And if you can't afford to work for free to get that experience, well then frick you, peasant. I'm in a similar situation. I'm highly educated, but I can't find a job in my field. I applied for simpler jobs and jobs that require no education, but I'm overqualified for those apparently. I'm German, and here in Germany, you basically become sort of a social outcast if you don't have a job. People judge you, they call you lazy and all that stuff. I'm collecting welfare at the moment, unfortunately, which is basically taxpayer money, and people get angry at me for that. They don't seem to understand that I need the money just to survive. Just get a job, so you don't have to live off other people's money anymore. I'm getting welfare because I can't find a job. That's the whole point of it. Also, I'm obviously not living a luxurious life. I've written more than 300 applications, but no one cares and people still call me lazy. Being broke, going hungry, and being completely alone. Being a server and waiting on a table of people that treat you like a servant. Server here. Last night, a guest at a table slapped me, but he'd already written his tip, $80, and I just took it. I've never felt that way before. He was a doctor, very wealthy, and put his arm around me in a brotherly way, but he was drunk and slapped me a few times in the face. But I need the money to pay for summer classes because in Texas, you don't get student loans for the summer courses. Heartbreak or being broken up with. It's awful, but I think an important growing experience. Shoot, I went through that with my first breakup. She was the first girl I ever loved and the only one to this day. Luckily, my buddies were there for me, but it was humbling. I was a mess, I just kept crying for days. And then I had a 3-day train trip, on which I could also barely keep it together. I know men crying isn't necessarily wrong, but it just felt so unnatural. I didn't know I could feel so bad. But it was a good learning and growing experience. In an interesting or happy twist, I ended up getting back together with the same girl 6 months later, and we've been married for 5 years now. Getting stuck somewhere far from home late at night and having to find your way back. It teaches you a lot of methods that might be useful in a bind. Watching someone die. When I watched my grandmother die, I looked at my dad holding her hand. At first I thought to myself, I'm going to do the same thing too. Then I thought, someone's going to watch me die too. It was at that moment that death no longer scared me. Death started to scare me again when I buried my father. Treasure that gap between losing your grandparents and your parents. When there's no one above you in the chain of mortality, things look a lot different. My only 2 pieces of advice are, tell your parents and grandparents and children that you love them. Regularly. I almost feel bad telling people this, because there are those that it's not true for, but I did get to say it to my dad in the last conversation we had before he died. That thought brings me some peace. Also, write a will. Dealing with an estate is a pain in the butt. Dealing with an estate without a will is a major pain in the butt that no one needs. There wasn't any fighting over assets, but just tracking everything down, paying necessary taxes, paying for the funeral and disposing of various assets was incredibly difficult while I was in the middle of mourning. Thanks for your contribution to the stories. These are wise words, and I hope it's a long time before the rest of us have to put your lessons into practice. Running through fields of wheat. So naughty. Telling someone that you have a crush on how you feel. Most of the time, they won't feel the same way. You'll feel like crap, and you will get over it, and then you realize that life goes on, and that person doesn't have as much control over you. Getting used to rejection is a powerful superpower. I did, and she did not reciprocate, but we remained friends because I was carrying a torch that would break Miss Liberty's back. I didn't realize until my wife came along some years later that this friend was only staying friends because her insecurity needed constant feeding of adoration regardless of the source. When I finally confronted her with it, she walked away and I never heard from her again. One of my major steps toward adulthood. A real-life failure. There are some people who can be supported through life without properly feeling the consequences of failure. But until you actually fail at something, you won't truly succeed either. A breakup with someone you love. I feel like it teaches you some stuff about yourself that you never really realized. But alternatively, I feel like you can learn that from losing friends or family members due to really crappy reasons. Working in hospitality and being harassed by an obnoxious customer for some minor inconvenience. You're literally asking for me to be fired, Miss Minivan. Do you realize that I'm a person with a whole life just like yours, and you want me to end up homeless because there's not enough extra ice in your drink? Your drink, which, might I add, was made by a robot and not by me. So glad I'm in a call center now. For some reason, people always specify, "Now, I'm not mad at you, you're just doing your job," before getting mad. It's so different from food service. Live on a service job or minimum wage for a year. no parents as a safety net, no rich friends you live with, no big savings account you can dig into if you really need it. Nada. None of that. Yeah, I totally know what it's like. My lawyer parents made me wash cars and teach yoga for a while to get real-world experience. No, you need to feel the real, present threat of being homeless. Nothing but a crappy job at Popeyes between you and the streets. Know what it's like to run down to the plasma center and sell your blood for gas money. Have to make up excuses to not go out with friends tonight because your paycheck got lost again. Put up with your friends' snide comments when you only eat half your 10-inch pizza and box the rest for home because you'd like to have lunch tomorrow. Know what it's like to have your employment put at risk by some snot-nosed rich teenage customer who decides your service wasn't fast enough. As someone who gets migraines, I wish more people experienced at least one so they know how bad and debilitating it can be. It's freaking selfish because deep down I know that I wouldn't actually wish that on anyone, but it's deeply frustrating when you're talking about it to someone or trying to call out from work and you get, "Oh, that's when you have a headache, right? Huh!" Or when they suggest taking some aspirin. Which, that crap is absolute misery to the nth degree and then some, and Excedrin migraine only works if you catch it in time. Otherwise, you're going to be curling into a pitiful ball of whimpering pain until your body either shuts itself down for a few hours and you have to start all over again. There's only one actual answer to this topic: the bitter taste of defeat. For men, unwanted creepy advances, catcalling, etc. First time it happened to me, I was like, what if Grossy McGrossface didn't leave me alone at the bar and then berated me for being worthless while all her gross friends laughed at me? Eye-opening. Visiting Auschwitz in Poland. It's an awful place to be surrounded by and is definitely not a positive experience whatsoever. But when you're there, you get a better understanding of what it was like to be trapped there. You can no longer hear those stupid, edgy jokes about Jews. It makes me shudder and feels painful to even think about that now, honestly. And that can only be a good thing in my opinion. It's just not funny. Learn from history and be very conscious of what leaders can do to their people. Most importantly, though, pay respects to those who suffered some of the greatest pain and depravity the world has ever seen. What's it like being friends with an influencer in real life? Awful. One of my best friends fell real hard into Instagram. And for a few years it was tolerable and understandable, albeit strange and annoying. Everything needed to be documented in specific ways, so lots and lots of photos, even if it took away from the moment. But the strange part was how, when it happened, she'd share things, and the captions always told a slightly different story than what actually happened. Like, just off enough for me and my other friends to say, that has a weird quality to it. Fast forward a couple of years and she gets engaged. Boom! This was the catalyst for the worst of the influencer mentality to come out. I was in the bridal party and it was a nightmare. No gratitude, just demands. Demands for expensive trips and expensive parties and all kinds of things that were above and beyond the means of her closest friends. And all the demands were because she had a following and had certain expectations to meet. It was really heart-wrenching to witness someone belittle their best friend and maid of honor for trying to plan a sweet bridal shower because it wasn't going to be at an expensive restaurant or art gallery. It reached its peak for me when, after the in-state wedding became an expensive destination wedding, there was the demand for an out-of-town bachelorette party a few weeks before. I was honest and said I couldn't afford the bachelorette. Mind you, I made about 1,000 sacrifices over these months to afford what I could, and I was promptly bridezillaed and told I ruined the whole experience and that I was an awful, fake, inauthentic person. It got so bad that the bridal party fractured and disintegrated. She lost 2 of her best friends. Myself and the maid of honor didn't even attend the wedding after all her behavior and blow-ups, and we've barely spoken since. All so she could have an Instagrammable wedding that would look good for the few photos she ended up sharing of it. And true to the weird, strange, rewritten reality ways she had, she published a public apology on her blog for her followers and family that completely distorted and rewrote what happened, painted herself as the victim, and got her the sympathy points she was looking for. People really lose themselves when they create an artifice for social media. I learned a lot from her. I dated one, not super popular, but followers in the 100k range last time we spoke. I remember a lot of getting ignored and only receiving nice gifts or acts of kindness when they could post about it. Asking me to go nice places, they didn't drive, only to leave me on the beach somewhere while they took pictures. Huge strain on the relationship, especially when they started to get bigger and there was more demand for content. Maybe I'm too cynical, but I could see myself dating an awful, vapid, but attractive person over a summer to bum off the expensive trips and gifts for a few months before leaving. Am I a crap person for that? Actually, don't answer. I'll be happier that way. She hasn't come to anything I've invited her to in 5 years because she only goes to events that further her business. Regularly says things like, "We're all using each other for something." Sometimes she texts me the exact same thing, word for word, over a couple of days, and it's obvious she just copy-pastes the same thing and sends it to all of us and then forgets who she sent it to. She still reaches out to me multiple times a year and claims I'm one of her best friends, but it sure doesn't feel like it. I've told her as much, but she just says, "This is my life now, my business comes first, and if you can't accept that, then I guess you're not a real friend." I worked with YouTube influencers in my last job with an agency that paired sponsors with these celebrities. I basically did the grunt work like insuring hotels, plane tickets, getting coffee, running errands, and meeting with the talent to ensure they were where they needed to be, like events, conferences, trade shows, parties, or whatever. Over time, you make friends with others who are in those positions, especially when you're running errands for some entitled pseudo-celebrity. The nicest YouTubers were the animators, always calm and understanding. The worst were the family vloggers. I've met all the big ones, and I never met one that wasn't a completely different person off camera. The kids are always spoiled, and no one disciplines them, so they're running around breaking things or acting like idiots. And no one can yell at them lest their influencer parents find out. A close second is makeup YouTubers. Pretty mundane, honestly. My friend is conventionally attractive, and if you look at her social media, you'd think she were a supermodel millionaire who goes on tons of trips. She's actually chronically unemployed and has an income of less than $10K a year. Her boyfriend makes about $60K, which is enough to afford them a very nice 3.5-bedroom apartment, and she has tons of props she uses to make each room look different from day to day, so it seems like she's always in a new, exotic place. They take 2 trips a year to fun, tropical places in which she takes many photos and posts them as different places throughout the year. She's very kind, considerate, and a sparkling personality, but whenever we hang out, I tend to be a shoulder to cry on as she laments about her lack of success in life. It's quite sad, honestly, but with her creativity and personality, I think she'll achieve her dreams eventually. This is the most wholesome response I've seen in this post so far, yet it still manages to be sad. If anything, because she's actually a nice person, like you say, that actually makes it sadder than other responses I've read. It's annoying as frick. One of my buddies is constantly filming everything we do and posting it. It's to the point where people walk up to me on the street and ask me about him because they've seen me in his posts. I have no idea who they are. It dominates everything he does and has severely impacted his personal relationships. He can't keep a girlfriend, and it's clearly related to this obsession of his. He does occasionally get some cool stuff out of it, though. After pretty much kicking him out of my life because I don't want to be continually posted online, we come to an understanding that when he's about to take a pic or video, he hands me the phone so I'm not in the shot. That works okay for me. Friends with a high-profile athlete who's pretty popular on Insta. He's always on the phone and never lives in the moment. If we're doing anything fun, well, it basically didn't happen unless the world knows about it. It's just annoying. I can't imagine living for the approval or satisfaction of others. This was my ex-girlfriend. I couldn't eat before she took a dozen pictures. We went hiking and had to turn around less than a mile in, since she spent an hour taking photos and posting videos. Service connection wasn't good enough, so we went to the trail ahead. She had to post, or else people are gonna think I'm broke or depressed and they need to know I'm traveling. She lived her life through her phone. I post travel photos and have about 200 followers, 200, not 2,000 or higher. My friend somehow thought that was influencer status and decided to copy me, except she quit her job so she could travel more and grow her brand. In 2020, she lost her apartment, her car, and still hasn't found a job, but calls herself a professional influencer all the same. Professional influencer? Jesus fricking Christ. I know a wannabe influencer. She'll reply to her own posts from her husband's account praising herself. Then she'll reply to those posts as herself thanking him. It's hilarious, like Inception for Facebook. Apparently, this is not uncommon. I frequent a gossip blog that has a handful of crackpot commenters who, savvier members claim, have created multiple accounts to start drama and argue with themselves and others. The same individual has been accused of this multiple times, and the accusers seem pretty positive about it. It's a major disruption and a pain in the butt for those of us who just go there to read the blind items and guess the celebrity talk or some standard trash. At one point, the site master had to rejigger the whole site to implement a new commenting platform so we could self-regulate. It's a shame we lost almost 10 years of historical comments with accurate, juicy details as a result. Hey, don't judge me, we all have our weird little communities, right? Ugh, fabricating workplace drama with yourself? That's enough internet for the human race, I think. Let's burn it all down. Oh wait, I need it for my job. Damn it! Anyone want to buy cassette tapes of these videos from me via snail mail instead? To be honest, it's really crap to be friends with one. I feel like I've been completely forgotten about and like I don't matter anymore. I think that's just some weird misguided jealousy, but it still hurts because I miss talking to my friend. Depending on how far down the narcissism hole you think your friend has gone versus how normal they still are, it could be worthwhile having a chat about it or sending a brief text like, "Hey, hope you're rocking your online life. I miss chilling like we used to, and I'd love to hang out off the grid sometime. Let me know if you're down." But I don't know, that could be too cringe. I mean, I threw up a little at the rocking your online life part, but it is great advice, for most of these posts actually. Sad. In the beginning, they started because they got offers from brands because they were so popular on Instagram, and it was a lot of fun for them. Now they don't ever post pictures or videos without a filter. Rarely ever like a picture on the first try, and don't you dare post any pictures of them without getting their approval for it. Imagine trying to get a group picture with all of your friends for your birthday, but having to take almost 100 shots to get that one of your influencer friend that they're happy with. Also, in the beginning, I would like and comment on all of their posts, but now that's not enough. They expect me to message it to others, share it on my stories and my page, something about the new algorithms and likes not being important anymore. I hate posting stuff to my page, but I do it anyway to be supportive. It's so tiring. They do get free things sometimes though, that they sometimes share with me. Not worth it in my opinion. My cousin is a wannabe influencer. She kept denying family photos at a birthday party, so her mum told her just not to be in pictures anymore. Haha, idiot got a reality check. So incredibly annoying. I actually ended up cutting her off because everything had to be a photo opportunity. We could never just go out to lunch or see a movie without it turning into a photo shoot. She never did anything with our friend group unless it was aesthetic. And even then, she was so focused on getting us to take photos that A, she didn't get to enjoy the activity, and B, it started bringing everyone else down because they couldn't participate either. And this sounds so petty, but she could never just show up in a t-shirt and leggings. Because photos, obviously. Like even sleepovers and movie nights had to be a big production, and sometimes you just need to stuff your face with popcorn and look like a slob. It's good for the soul. She'd also complain a lot about how hard her job was. Our friendship group at the time consisted of an EMT, 2 nurses, a teacher, and me who was juggling university, tutoring, and working retail. Like, I'm sure she had challenges and all jobs are hard sometimes, but girl, you get paid to take selfies with free stuff and show up at events looking pretty. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. Mine became a horrible, self-centered bully. Exactly as fake and staged as you imagine it to be, the on-camera moments are completely non-genuine. It is, in the end, just an acting or modeling job and not their real personality. The fake laughing in photos is always so cringe-inducing for me to watch. Then the photo is taken and the smile is instantly replaced with a furrowed brow as they decide whether the pictures are acceptable. No, they're not. They hand the camera back to whoever and restart the candid laughing all over again. I sold my place to one a while ago, one of those newly green, sustainable body positivity types. Pretty much everything about what this person projects as a social media image is as fake as it turned out. It was quite a sobering experience. She is annoying. There's no other word to describe her. I feel sorry for her because she's a person that needs attention all the time. We're not friends, but we live in the same house. Everything is fake. The attitude, the mannerisms, everything. It sounds stupid until you realize they clear close to 7 figures a year. One time we vacationed with them, and when we were out to dinner, they said to us, "1 second, we need to go and film a bit." And they went from our friends, who are calm and nice, to their, "Hey guys, we're in the beautiful south of France." Annoying people everyone loves to hate. I've got a friend with 75k subscribers on YouTube in a language other than English. It used to be about their weekend getaways with nice drone shots. It was interesting. Then gradually became about their lives. She gets her phone or camera out at sometimes random moments, which could get annoying. She got pregnant, and now everything is about the baby. Oh, that poor child. I'd hope that she's at least one of the ones that doesn't show the baby's face, but that seems like I'm asking too much for some of these people. Honestly, she's really nice. She hosted a book club in a bar I worked at and would always order wine or pretty cocktails for photos. But once everyone left, she'd sit at the bar and shoot the crap with me while drinking yard beers. My sister has tens of thousands of followers. We used to be best friends in high school, and she was my favorite sibling. I'm number 7 out of 8 kids in my family. I know my parents are crazy. Now I feel like I barely know her. It's like she's this shell of a person that she used to be. Seriously, I've never met anyone who could make me laugh as hard as she used to make me laugh. Now I just sort of want to blow my brains out when I'm around her. She's just so obsessed and fake now. It actually makes me really sad. My wife has a friend that thinks she's a Kardashian with her 80k followers and does everything for the gram. Her ex-boyfriend bought most of them, and she only gets around 50 likes per post. Not a friend per se, but my ex's sister is an influencer for beauty and makeup, with over 1 million followers on YouTube. She was so anxious and stressed all the time, horribly insecure. If she got some backlash or bad comments, she'd be so upset, was on a lot of anti-anxiety medication. And meanwhile, all of her posts are just her looking beautiful and traveling. She didn't have many friends either. That I saw anyway, just lots of fans. It looked like a terrible life. It ruined the illusion for me, that their lifestyles are happy and perfect, that is, and I'm thankful for being able to see behind the curtain. One of my friends dated someone that was really Instagram famous. He invited us to his house for a Christmas party, and this was when I realized how fake social media really is. The guy didn't have the car he paraded on social media. He had leased it, taken several photo shoots with it, and then given it back. His house was in a different city than he claimed. I don't think it was for security reasons, though. He said he lived in a very rich city, but his house was in a more modest place. He asked me to send him the videos I took at the party and posted them and didn't even tag me because I didn't have enough followers. The worst part was that all the social media people at the party just kept yelling over each other trying to make the next big joke, but none of them were funny. Dude has millions of people fooled. The part about always trying to make the next big joke but not being funny is incredibly relatable. I ran with a popular crowd in high school. I was a major D-bag too, and I regret it. And we all liked to pretend we were influencers. Always had our phones out, always recording things, and constantly trying to make videos like the Vines and the 30-minute Vine compilations we'd watch. At least we had the excuse of being dumb high schoolers, but man, was it cringy. I have a friend who's recently started trying to become one. It's so dumb. She posts half-undressed photos of herself with captions that have nothing to do with the picture. She spends hours getting ready for her iPhone photo shoots and has little time for anything besides content creation. Being an influencer is pretty much against everything I care about and stand for, so I envision us slowly drifting further apart. That crap is stupid. I'm not friends with any of my influencers anymore, but I used to work in San Diego nightlife, and I had to rub elbows with a lot of these types. I'm talking 1 to 6 million follower type girls who were brought into the club as promoters, back in 2016 when 1 million followers was a huge deal. The girls themselves aren't actually that bad. Some are crazy entitled, but for the most part they're there for business, and San Diego is a small enough town that reputation matters. The worst were the sub-suckers. Other girls who had fewer than 1 million followers who hung around to try and soak up subscribers and make contacts in the industry. Think of them like small-time actors who think they're a big deal because they've got a few pilots in production. I'm not big now, but you should kiss my butt because I'm the next big thing types. These girls would literally do nothing but take pictures all night or all day depending on the club and demand free bottles, extra service, and other garbage without ever tipping. F influencers. I went on a date with one and it was just frustrating. Pleasant enough girl, but she was on her phone a lot. I had sympathy since it's her job, but I felt ignored a lot of the time we were together. It's sad. You always watch them slowly mentally degrade. Always ends in full-blown NPD or them having literally zero self-confidence. Their goal is to meet artificial metrics in terms of likes or views or follows. For a lot of them, that's their definition of success or their goal in life, and if they're not hitting it, they've failed as people in their minds. So they go one of two routes. One is thinking that they're really not good enough and don't deserve to be liked, which leads to a lack of confidence and then becoming a shell of the person they used to be. 2 is narcissism, where they come to the conclusion that they're the best person ever and no one else knows what they're talking about, and every single flaw, fault, or mistake they've ever made is someone else's fault. That sounds like a rough life to live, and I wouldn't wish it upon anyone, to be honest. Not an influencer as such, but I worked as an animator for an educational kids YouTube channel for a number of years. My boss was obsessed with views and subscriber count. A big part of one of my colleagues' jobs was spending hours trawling through all of our competitors' videos and channels, putting all of their views and subscriber counts into a massive spreadsheet. He also couldn't work out why none of his employees were as invested in the channel as he was, and why we weren't all clamoring to do huge amounts of unpaid overtime in the name of furthering the channel's growth. When I got hired, the channel had just passed 1 million subs and 1 billion views, and both those numbers doubled by the time I left. This was a few years ago, before YouTube Kids was even a thing, but kids' videos always get a huge amount of views anyway. Last I heard, he had fired all of his remaining employees and was making unboxing videos alone in his house that got hardly any views. My sister was an influencer of sorts. She was on Instagram doing bodybuilding and was sponsored by a few protein shake companies. She didn't have mega fame or anything, but did have friends in high places. She was one of those B-word popular girls in high school, and that persona carried on into her influencer career. She was very distant from her family and cut off most of her old friends. The few times she did visit, she was very selective about who could be seen with her. She moved to another city to be closer to the bodybuilding scene, building followers up as she went. She dated some guy who gave her a lavish lifestyle for a bit, then cheated on her after a few years. Probably the entire time, actually. So she moved to the other side of the country. Continued her bodybuilding, but then decided she wanted to be a cop. They told her she'd never be a cop with a social media presence like that, because too easy for the media to use it against her, so she went home, deleted every account that day, and then went back. Now, she's a cop, and doing so much better in life than she ever did before. All of her old personality is gone, and I've never been prouder of her in my life. She's really nice now, and spends her days being a small-town cop in the middle of nowhere. I've driven 3 hours, hiked 1 hour so they could take a couple of photos over about 5 minutes and then whined that they were ready to go home. Sometimes they'll buy unhealthy but grammable food, take photos of them licking it, and then throw it out. I also have a friend who, when overseas, will set alarms for like 3 a.m. to wake up and post their photos from the day at the peak time back home. I haven't seen them for a while. My cousin is a moderately successful Instagram model and she absolutely hates it. She hates her fans, finds them all cringy and pathetic, hates the drama and how PC it all is. In real life, she's very conservative and traditional. Only does it because it's the only way she can make money. She dropped out of school and endorsing products and taking pictures of herself is the only way she knows how to pay rent. In real life, she's basically the complete opposite of the happy, bubbly, ditzy girl she plays online. And we often laugh over some of the messages she receives, including proposals and women angry that their sons or husbands are following her. How do people not realize it's all an act? I mean, damn. It took all of 15 picoseconds of my girlfriend showing me people she follows on Instagram to realize these aren't authentic people living realistic lives. And I'm a frickin' moron. He was cool, but at the same time, difficult. Get him alone and he was okay, but go out places with him and he started unnecessary drama and was super emotional. I ended up not being friends with him after a convention we went to because he caused a lot of trouble for me and my friends. It sucked because I was the one who intervened and allowed him to stay and all of my friends were super upset with him, so I felt like I allowed a lot of the issues. I hope he's doing okay though. What is the worst advice you've ever received in your life?
Don't quit your job at Walmart. You've been here for 3 years. Just 7 more and you'll be fully vested in the company.
Ugh, one thing I just remembered about that job. We had a manager who, since the time I started working there, couldn't speak above a whisper no matter how hard she tried. It had been like this for years. 2 years after I was hired, she finally found a doctor who figured out the problem. Apparently, if you're stressed out every single day for years on end, it can cause a psychogenic voice disorder. He ordered her to take 3 months off work. When she came back, she could speak normally. When I was in high school, I had a friend who was not the smartest. I remember him telling me if I didn't want to get a woman pregnant, then she should be on top so the semen can't flow up. He became a father his sophomore year.
You know, son, there's really no such thing as cheating if you aren't married. The Bible doesn't recognize any relationship that isn't bound in the covenant of the Lord. So until you're married, relationships don't really exist.
Thanks, Dad. You just indirectly explained why you're on your third marriage. Had an uncle tell me that men could be allowed to fool around in relationships, as it was their impulse to have as many children as possible. And women, well, look at a man other than your husband and you're a prostitute. I have some questionable family members. I called Kids Help Phone when I was a teen to ask for advice on how to help my depressed friend. They advised I find new friends. I wish I was making this up. To clarify, the conversation was very short. I explained my friend had been struggling, depressed, and with no motivation and isolating herself from others. Along those lines, it was a while back, and I asked what I could do. The only piece of advice they gave me was, let her sort it out on her own, and find new friends. That's it. Nothing to interpret or misinterpret, I don't think. We remained friends though, and she's alright now. Get used to it, my old boss told me when my 8-hour day shift job changed to a variable 8 to 10-hour night shift. This would effectively remove me from spending time with my wife and young children. I took his advice as a catalyst to engineer the greatest adventure of my life. Transferred to a job across country, hugely upgraded my living conditions for my family. New boss completely understood the demands of a parent and adjusted my work schedule accordingly. I'm so thankful for my new boss, but I'm even more thankful for the old one, for giving me the worst advice I've ever received in my life. There you go. Kinda seemed like the first boss might have been burnt out on their own life to be that callous about yours. You deserve your best life, folks. When my marriage was on the rocks, my dad said, son, go out and find yourself an older woman that just wants to frick and keep your marriage. She, my wife, doesn't have to know and you'll be getting laid and the older woman will just be happy without a commitment. Thankfully, I didn't go that route and my marriage is repaired and stronger than ever today.
Oh, but the old lady who just wants to F is still lonely. Stop being so selfish.
It looks like you're using an ad blocker. Please turn it off to continue viewing this page. I mentioned in passing that my boyfriend suffered from a terrible Charlie horse in the middle of the night. My bizarre space cadet of a coworker heard this and immediately interjected, frantically explaining that I needed to get him to a hospital because this was a surefire symptom of pregnancy. She also recommended that I call the news because my boyfriend is, well, a man. I guess she thought history was about to go down. Spoiler alert, he wasn't pregnant. She also believed that cheese made outside the US wasn't really cheese. Her mindset on most issues was difficult to explain. Just have kids. You'll figure out how to afford them later. When my daughter was an infant, my wife couldn't breastfeed and my daughter couldn't digest formula very well, so I had to buy a special pre-digested formula for like $25 a can. I was at the cashier paying for the formula and the guy in front of me was gathering his things. He said to me, he says, when my kids were babies, I wish I knew what I know now. And I said, what's that? What do you know? He said, babies don't need formula. All they need is sugar water. All the rest is a scam. And I was like, I'm so glad you didn't know that back then.
Yeah, my brother had someone tell him that babies can start eating solids 2 to 3 weeks after their birth.
The coworker who told him this has 2 children. A guy at my work told me once that as long as you don't physically block the exit, it wasn't considered the unspeakable act. I had just asked how to deal with my girlfriend who wasn't upfront about her interests. Yeah, I made a note to warn all of my female friends about him. My high school guidance counselor said that I wasn't college material, and I took her advice and started the process of joining the Marines with my friends, who were also told this. My chemistry teacher at the time scheduled a substitute, personally drove me to a nearby college, and sat there with me while I spoke with admissions. Fast forward a few years, and after receiving a chemistry and chemical engineering dual degree and then going on to get a PhD in chemical engineering, I'd say that guidance counselor knew crap all. Just listen to your academic advisor, they know what they're doing. Thousands of dollars added to cost of education, an extra senior year, and a withdrawal on record. Seriously, don't be afraid to push back on your advisors if you're concerned about what they say or do.
Just don't fight back. Men act like that because they want to assert dominance. As soon as he realizes you've accepted his behavior, he'll leave you alone.
The hard and fast rule for any human relationship is that any bullcrap you accept early on in that relationship sets you up to get even more bullcrap in the future. Guaranteed.
I have an open door policy, so don't hesitate to see me if you have any issues at all. I learned the hard way never to trust any boss or HR rep that says that crap. Utilizing open door policies is a damn good way to get fired for being a troublemaker. I'm having an issue at work. My boss is a major creep to every woman. Doesn't matter how old or young. My coworker and I were talking about reporting him to HR because they have an anonymous line you can call. However, HR says nothing will ever come of an anonymous tip because they need to be able to have your name and interview you. Otherwise, people would just be calling in fake information about anyone they don't like. Nobody wants to be the first one that steps up and has their name out there and get in trouble. I just got promoted to my dream position by him, so I definitely don't want to risk it. Yep, sadly enough, I've heard that in most American companies, the last thing you want to do is complain about a higher-up to HR. I hope that's flawed advice and that most of you find otherwise, but it's what I've heard. They exist to protect the company they work for. When I was little, I told my mom that I was sad because some kids were bullying me. She said I should tell them that when they bullied me, it hurt me inside and that they'd stop. I did what she said. This was bad advice. They did not stop. I know someone who taught her 5-year-old to tell people, "You're making me very angry." Yeah, that worked out really well. Don't go through chemotherapy, eat this nut and berry mix instead, said my younger sister when she visited me in hospital when I went for febrile neutropenia, which means no white blood cells and I had a fever. She also showed up claiming to have bronchitis and didn't wear a mask and full-on hugged me. Yeah, she's a piece of work. Even knowing what I do now about what it would do to my reproductive health, in short, permanent menopause at 26, I'd still go with chemotherapy 1,100%. I was going to die without it, with a 100% guarantee. I'd be dead by the time I turned 27. My life is more important than my ability to have children the old-fashioned way. I should clarify I was diagnosed with diffuse large B-cell lymphoma, co-classified with bulky disease, and was receiving chemo for it. The febrile neutropenia was a side effect of the treatment. Holistic people are the most fun, aren't they? This leaf from Tanzania will cure you of your life-threatening disease, and it's all natural. My psychiatrist told me I could stop taking the SNRI antidepressants I was on more or less cold turkey. It was technically safe, but holy crap, it was a tough couple of weeks. Partly because of unpleasant physical sensations and partly because it was the closest to actual crazy I'd ever felt. Buy a house in 2006. It'll be the best decision you ever make. It was the worst decision they ever made. When I found out I was pregnant with my youngest son, my mum and her boyfriend told me to abort. Not because I couldn't afford the baby or that there was something wrong with him, but because my mum was going through menopause and didn't want to be reminded that she couldn't have any more kids. Just open another credit card. It's free money. Coming from my friend who is in thousands of dollars worth of debt and has no idea she will eventually have to pay that off. Also, another gem. This same girl thought she would get a marketing job right out of college that would pay her $70K a year, and she wouldn't take anything less because she'd be selling myself short. Don't be afraid to seek help at mental health. It won't adversely affect your Air Force career. I've been turned down for 2 amazing job opportunities because of my visits to mental health. To clarify, I'm already in the Air Force. I saw mental health for depression and anxiety-related issues, and was later rejected for new jobs with the Air Force because of those visits, despite assurances to and endorsements by several providers stating that my issues had been resolved. The last couple of years of my life and career have been immensely frustrating, and it's put me in a dark place that I haven't really been able to escape since. I'm not planning to do anything stupid, don't get me wrong, but it's hard to see the proverbial light lately. I'm not giving up. I think I'm too stubborn to do that. But I've come to realize that I'm probably going to be here for a while, so I might as well make myself comfortable. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below, and if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. In my final semester of college, my insanely jealous, distraught mother called me to make one last plea to get me to drop out. She went on to say, "What would you do if you had to watch helplessly as your own daughter threw her life away and became a nurse?" By the way, she married an elementary school dropout and was a bitter retail worker. She couldn't handle watching me be the first in my family to graduate from college and make something of myself, and she dealt with it by constantly shaming me. If I scored 99% on something, she complained about the last 1%. If I got 100%, she said I was stupid because I didn't earn bonus marks. We don't talk anymore, and I'm a successful nurse. As is tradition, I received the typical, "Well, I hope you still love her and talk to her. Be the better person," response that survivors of this kind of behavior often receive. If your narcissistic parents won't stop, there's nothing wrong with leaving and never looking back. Yes, even if it's your own mother. This is me being the better person and respecting myself and my children enough to not subject us to her behavior. Sounds familiar? My dad was a bricklayer and his dad was a fabric cutter. I got constant complaining every day about wasting time at school like a posh C-word ever since I was 16 and decided to do A-levels. When I left for university, he told me I wouldn't last a month. I started practicing medicine as a doctor next summer, and he still calls me to tell me all the lads I knew on the council estate have married and had kids and have their own cars. Yeah, Dad, I know I'd have my own van by now if I was a plumber. No, Dad, I know there's nothing wrong with being in the trades or the forces. It's just not for me. Nothing like holding your children back into the exact same path as you despite their dreams lying elsewhere. Keep it up, crappy parents. A friend of mine would always get me to talk about my relationships and would somehow twist the smallest things into seeming like they were really bad, and then suggest that I should break up with them, and I'd be like, "You're right, why am I putting up with this crap?" when it could have been something completely normal. Happened with 3 girls in a row, and it was always the same stuff he said, and I just snapped out of it one day and realized that I'd been the crappy boyfriend, and the reason it didn't work was because of how I was acting after hearing all of these things put into my head. I think he was just jealous because he could never get any girls, but what a weird thing to look back on. Engineer, salaried, married with kid. Also have a master's degree and several years of experience. Vice president of the company advised me to work at McDonald's after work if I wanted to make more money. He even took out his calculator and told me how many hours I should work. That guy was fired about a year after that for bullying employees. I tried to leave but ended up staying and turned down other jobs. Not a bad place to be for now. I spoke about it to a couple of senior executives I trusted at the time. The second worst advice I ever received from the same guy, he tells me, "You have to reward people for putting in extra hours at their work. Do you know how to do that?" Me, "Bonuses?" He proceeded with opening a Costco-sized bag of Fig Newtons, handed me a bag, got out of his office and started distributing Fig Newtons on the manufacturing floor. This wasn't me personally, but my mum told me that we had a neighbor that used to constantly tell my dad that life insurance was a waste of money and tried to convince him to stop paying for it. Fortunately, my dad was intelligent because he died 5 years later and my family would have been completely destroyed without it. My careers advisor in high school, when I said, "I think I want to do something with computers," she said, "Have you heard of Microsoft?" Then she wrote the word Microsoft on a piece of paper and slid it across the table, and that was my careers interview over. Out of everything, this has to be the funniest one here, especially if you apply it to weirdly specific stuff. "I think I want to do something with cars." "Have you heard of Toyota?" Then she wrote Toyota on a piece of paper and slid it across the table, and that was my career interview over. Someone told me I should have kids in my early 20s so I can just get it out of the way. Your family is the only thing that will ever be there for you, not your friends, your family. And I just got excommunicated from my narcissistic, abusive family 2 days before Thanksgiving. Anything in any romantic comedy ever. Harass the woman you want with unwanted, over-the-top romantic gestures until she falls in love with you. The part that bugs me the most is how they always make the current boyfriend or girlfriend horrible. Most of the time they don't even do anything wrong. They just aren't making their significant other the center of their universe.
Stop reading. You read too much. You're going to hurt your eyes. Go watch TV for a while.
My grandma, every time she visited, while grabbing the books from my hands, it was like something off The Simpsons. She really said that? My elders had to force me to read. The advice to have children as soon as possible. 8th grade geography exam was coming up and we'd been studying the Middle East. My father had recently returned from Africa where someone had incorrectly informed him that Israel is technically a part of Africa. He was extremely convincing. My teacher literally said, "Jesus, we've been studying this for weeks, kid." So, take a piece of sandpaper and rough your nips up before the baby comes. A coworker to pregnant me about how to feed my kid. I don't have to deal with that eventuality of parenthood, and I'm doubled over in front of my screen in pain after reading that. "Oh, go and see Jack and Jill with Adam Sandler. It's funny," said Todd from accounting. Dear God, there are no words. Did you see it? I assume Todd is dead from having tragically swallowed his own tongue during breakfast. Stop thinking about depression. There are more people who have greater problems than yours. Non-verbatim. It's like saying don't eat food when you're hungry because someone somewhere else is starving. When people told me to ignore the bullies, you don't need to fight them, but standing up for yourself is far better than taking it, internalizing it, and letting it hold you back. My college roommate, drink beer and nothing hard when you party. It fills you up so you'll throw it up before you get alcohol poisoning, and then you can drink more right away. Don't make any friends. Friends will ruin your life. I haven't made any friends, and I've ruined my own life just fine, thank you very much. When I was a teenager and had acne, none of the over-the-counter acne medicine was working. My mum brought me to a dermatologist, and the medicine they prescribed me was very expensive, so before buying it, my mum searched for any home remedies online. The home remedy she found was to use urine. The way to apply it was worse. My mum went to the store to buy supplies, and for over a month, I would pee into a diaper and place it on my face for 15 minutes as part of my morning routine. Worst advice I've ever taken. When I was about 5 or 6 years old, I was given a Superman cape for my birthday. I was told that it could make me fly. After a few days of not being able to fly, I began to ask people how to make it work. They advised that I needed to find somewhere high up to jump off of. So I started jumping off fences, trees, and then I was told I needed to jump off something taller. I was miserable with the school I was in and wanted to study my dream career. A friend told me that no one does what they like and I should deal with it. I didn't. I did leave, and now I'm about to get a degree on the career I love. I know things will be tough, but I don't regret it. In my country, most of us are out of a job, so I figured if I'm going to be unemployed, better be at something I like. Somebody told me that girls like to be smacked around a little. Pro tip, always ask first. Schedule all of your college courses at 8 a.m., then you've got the rest of the day to relax. This works if you're a morning person. Afternoon classes were hell for me, but I loved having 8s. When you're undecided about what to do with your life and people say, do what you're passionate about or love, well, fricking thank you. Like, I'm obviously not that passionate about anything if I've got to ask this question, right? I was advised to go to Bible college and to find myself a godly husband. I didn't take that advice and instead hung out at the engineering college and married an engineer. I had a friend do this. She found a godly husband, all right. 3 rehab stints later, years of physical, emotional, and verbal battering, and numerous threats, and she's just now finding the strength to divorce him. When I was fresh out of the Navy and going to college on the GI Bill, my dad tried repeatedly to get me to drop out of college. He honestly thought that pursuing a biology degree at no cost to myself was a waste of my time. It wasn't until I started my master's degree that he was finally supportive of my educational goals. He tells me he's proud of me, and when I remind him that he tried to get me to drop out, he denies it. It's funny how selective parents' memories get when you get older. They never seem to remember anything they did wrong. Just get over it. My mum, anytime I had any sort of emotional, mental, or bullying issue. Your mother was likely told this growing up, and it's the only thing she knows to say in this situation. She probably doesn't even realize it either. My high school guidance counselor told me, "You'll never make a living drawing monsters." I became one of the original artists of Magic the Gathering, created the Prototype franchise, ran various video game franchises for Warner Brothers like Harry Potter and Game of Thrones, created the Delta Green series of books which topped 440k on Kickstarter and BackerKit. These things are filled with monsters, so suck it, Miss Ehrlich. Not me, but I was there when my husband's aunts told him that he needed to be more like his cousin. Everyone knew the cousin was worthless, so it was shocking. At the time, my husband was in college and working full-time in IT, actually doing pretty well for himself, while his cousin had a job at some stadium making $12, which they all thought was great. After their little pep talk, they convinced his mum to agree. That's when I told him I believed in him and they were crazy. 20 years later, my husband is very successful, while the cousin is in prison for inappropriate conduct with minors.
Seriously, his answers were stupid C words. When did an improvement ruin a product? Algorithm-based timelines instead of chronological ones. Cough, Facebook, Instagram. I love seeing posts from 5 days ago at the top of my feed. Facebook mid-video ads. Screw that, personalized ads. It just makes me scroll down my feed. There hasn't been a single video that I hadn't skipped every time an ad comes up. Literally, the second I see that little countdown to an ad pop up, I lose all interest in the video and close it. I hate the new plastic Snapple bottles. Weather.com. It used to provide me with accurate weather forecasts. It is now one giant cesspool of clickbait articles with questionable weather numbers mixed in sporadically. Literally everything about iTunes. Someone once called it a software update utility that also plays music. Someone here has already said Facebook, but I need to make a special mention for Messenger. F you, Messenger. Yes, I know I added a friend because I fricking added them. When a story gets traction, the author generally says, "Oh gosh, this isn't what I want to be remembered for on the internet." For me, this is exactly what I want to be remembered for. F you, Messenger, you piece of crap. Messenger treats us like we're people from commercials. "Hey John, just wanted to let you know I've connected with you on Facebook." Wow, that's great to hear, Simon. Digital cable. Cable used to flip channels instantly. All you had to do was remember a 2-digit number for each channel. Now it takes 30 seconds to load up every channel. That stupid live camera option on Facebook when you swipe left. As someone with mild motor tics, especially with my hands, I'm constantly opening the fricking camera by accident. If I see that dancing guy one more time, I'm going to do nothing and probably still accidentally open that camera 1,000 more times. This comment is from 6 years ago, and the narrator has just tried swiping left a few times to see whether he can make some kind of camera appear, and at the very least it doesn't seem to be a thing on my Facebook app anymore. So maybe they did realize how terrible it was. Now we just have to deal with all the many other things terrible about Facebook. Whatever Yahoo did to Flickr. Yahoo tends to do that. I'm really curious on how Yahoo is turning a profit, or at least had enough presence to make Verizon want them. Yahoo is like that one kid who was super cool freshman year, but by senior year he became the creep selling substances and hitting on middle schoolers. For a search engine, they really don't do their job well. So many ads on their page. F me sideways, the company that got majorly hacked was actually doing pretty well for itself. Who knew? My mouse has pop-ups in the system tray. My mouse has pop-ups in my system tray. ES File Explorer for Android. It used to be a nifty little program. Now it's laden with ads, irritating notifications, etc. A textbook example of bloatware. Skype, the mobile version. It was very practical, simple to use before. Since June or so, it became meh. Copying Instagram and Messenger's trends with these moment things, a terrible UI, and even a lack of functionalities from the previous versions. Oh, this applies to the PC version too. Skype sucks, and Discord's got video chat now and does everything Skype did better. Honestly, the only thing I want is screen share with sound. Then I can say Skype is 100% dead. When Hulu announced they'd be updating their interface, I was excited because they have a great content library, but the interface wasn't super good. It feels like they made it worse on purpose. Its dumpster fire of an interface on Android makes me question every person who worked on it. That's how I feel about Amazon Prime on anything but a PC. I know there's good stuff in there, but it's a pain in the butt looking for it. And it's pretty awful on the PC as well. I really haven't looked over there in a while, but the last time I did, they had seasons of shows as the main content for the show instead of the show name. For example, if they had Supernatural over there, instead of searching for Supernatural and finding that show and clicking in to look at seasons, you'd find like 11 separate entries of the show listed Supernatural, season, number, all in alphabetical order. So it looked like this. Supernatural Season 8, Supernatural Season 11, 5, 4, 9, 1, 7, 6. Next page of results, Supernatural Season 10, Season 3, Supernatural Season 2, really fricking helpful all round. Subscriptions for literally everything. You can't even buy software anymore, only rent.
I'm looking at you, Adobe.
Torrenting Adobe products is great. No monthly fees and no updates. Pyrex glass kitchenware. They used to be the gold standard in high-quality tempered glass products. But in 1998 they changed from borosilicate glass to soda lime glass, which was supposed to be cheaper and lighter, but it's less heat-resistant and breaks more easily. Whenever a news site has a video clip embedded at the top of the article that autoplays, and then fricking follows me down the page in a little embedded window in the corner while continuing to play "Frick you, go away," and then it autoplays another video that has nothing to do with the article you're trying to read. Oh, what's that? You're listening to a music or podcast while you're reading the article? Not anymore. I'm taking over the sound. Every iOS update never fails to remove a feature I like or make something worse. Star Wars Galaxies, a great MMO that was ruined by improving it with combat and class system overhaul in order to compete with WoW. This only drove away the players and completely killed the game.
They did it twice. A lot of people weren't happy with the original combat upgrade, but the new game experience really drove people away. I really liked the original tree progression system. It was a really good game before they messed it all up.
Almost every news or sports website redesign that adds white space, reduces readability, and removes critical content and relevant links to provide more space for social media tie-ins, irrelevant video clips, and invasive ad space. Content is being Twitterized.
I keep wondering why all these news and article sites only had a strip of text in the center 25% of the screen. Everything else was just white space. Then I saw one on a friend's computer without ad block. Holy frick, how do people stand that?
When I have to use a computer at school or when a site makes you whitelist it, it's such a horrible barrage on your senses. Feels like Fahrenheit 451. Can't think about the news because "Buy Pepsi" is dominating your attention. Hyundai now has an alarm on the dashboard that makes a piercing ding every time it detects the roadway is colder than 40 degrees. I live in North Idaho. I would do anything to disable that fricking alarm. Anything. Whatever the frick they did with mac and cheese, the Kraft brand. I saw a commercial semi-recently where they were all proud saying that they changed the recipe and nobody noticed. Bullcrap. I fricking noticed and I don't like it anymore. Didn't even notice, yeah. They didn't change it a little, it just doesn't even taste like it used to. You should check out the bulk mac and cheese powder at Bulk Barn. It's not exactly like old KD, but it's closer than the new garbage. Plus, now I can have Radiatorian cheese instead of elbow noodles. The narrator did not understand any part of all this American product discussion, but figured he would enlighten any American viewers that are missing Kraft brand mac and cheese to the existence of this alternative from whatever or whoever Bulk Barn is. Is Bulk Barn a large gentleman called Barney? I'll never know. Heinz used to make hot ketchup that was insanely delicious. Then some buttwipe decided that it needed co-branding, so they put Tabasco in it, and now it's Heinz Hot and Spicy with Tabasco, and it tastes like butt. Almost all of YouTube's updates. First, the channel list update. Before you had your feed and you to your right, and all of your subscribed channels appeared on a black bar. Then they turned it into some stupid tabs thing. Probably the worst in my opinion is the comment section update. Now pressing view replies takes you to a different page with just that comment, instead of listing them right underneath the comment. Also, whenever I try to scroll through the comments, it always acts like I want to reply. Also, the trending tab and the share tab. The trending tab always has such stupid crap in it, and I don't think that anyone uses the shared tab at all. Most of these are on mobile, but if you're on your desktop, you probably won't notice them. Oh, this is easy. Angry Fricking Birds. Formerly one of the most fun apps, now ad-ridden garbage and a sign of the mobile industry. I don't even mind the ads that much if the game is free, but the energy system crap is insane. The guy who invented that and anyone who funds that behavior should be launched into the sun. Fricking garbage. Energy system? Oh god, is that as bad as it sounds?
Yep. You only get so much energy per day, and when you run out, you can't play unless you pay with premium currency. So not only do you have to pay to play, you have to keep paying to keep playing. It literally boggles my mind that people actually fork over money just to play more. Yik Yak used to be a fantastic social media app catered towards college kids a few years ago. It was basically an anonymous Twitter specifically for your geographic location. It was fantastic for news and updates about campus events and seeking help or advice from fellow students. You could even view Yik Yaks at other colleges around the US. Then they decided to add optional usernames, and that started a downward descent into what was essentially a rip-off of Facebook. Users left in droves, and they shut down for good this past summer. It was a shame too, because at its peak it was a must-have for any college kid at a decent-sized school. This sucked for more than just students. I work for a university, and yes, faculty and staff downloaded the app, mostly just for a good laugh. Most of us didn't care what everyone was saying, but what it was fantastic about was an unfiltered forum for real, legitimate complaints. I can think of 2 or 3 things that got addressed and resolved more or less as a direct result of the app. It always amazes me that these people are able to go from an app worth millions to killing it in a few short months. Or that whoever made the design choice for usernames wasn't promptly fired when they were overwhelmingly negatively received. Apparently, the best approach was to let them continue down that path instead. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. I'm convinced hot Cheetos use less and less chili powder over time, and it makes them suck. I'm convinced the same thing happened to Sour Patch Kids. Either they wimped out on the sour, or I became immune to its effects. Imgur requiring you to log in to upload pictures from a phone. Instagram's non-chronological feeds, in my opinion. It annoyed me so much I barely use it anymore. I love checking Facebook and seeing a post from a good friend. I'm having a beer at X. Anyone keen to join me? Posted 2 days ago. Do I go? Will he still be there? Half of the practical uses of social media no longer work. This happens on an almost daily basis on Instagram. I'll see a comic post about a show happening tonight in 10 hours. Plenty of time to make plans and come out. Then I check and the post was from 22 hours ago. Unfortunately, this is the reality of practically every form of social media. It's very difficult to monetize a chronological feed purely with ads, so they change it to top liked or something else, which is very easy to monetize. Just give us some money and we'll make sure your post stays at the top of your followers' feed for 24 hours. Car alarms. Not once have I heard one and thought, my God, someone is breaking into that car. I hear it and go, who effed up now? My friend borrowed his wife's car and accidentally set the alarm off at a gas station. He couldn't figure out how to get it to turn off, and the manual for the car wasn't in the car for some reason, so he just drove it home with the alarm blaring the whole time. No one stopped him or did anything. They completely ignored it. LinkedIn after their design overhaul. You used to just be able to scroll down to browse through a person's projects, awards, and achievements. Now, entire sections are reduced to just 1-sentence-long, vague descriptions, and the profiles just look fugly now. You have huge amounts of white space and teeny tiny little profile pictures, which are now circular too, to make it even more awkward. Not sure what I was supposed to improve, but I freaking hate how half the space on modern smartphones is eaten up by apps I don't use and can't uninstall. Yes, frick that, man. It's basically a false advertisement. Yeah, here's our 16GB phone, but 11GB are all apps you never use and can't delete. Still 16GB though. Have fun with your 2 whole apps of your choice. Maybe the narrator is a freak, but he's never once in his life, from the first iPhone to his modern Samsung, used up all the storage on his device. Is that weird? Anything Facebook does. Remember when Facebook was chronological and genuinely about what you and your mates were up to? And now it's just glorified cloud storage for memes, financed by irrelevant ads. Don't get me wrong, man likes a meme. It's just not why I joined some 8 years ago. Do you want a rip-off of Snapchat story on your phone? Do you want every photo you take to give you a forced pop-up asking you to want to add this? Do you want listing yourself as going to an event to automatically create a dummy chat with everyone else listed as going? Do you want every friend request to create a dummy chat? Do you want swiping down on the app, the universal refresh motion, to instead open a camera?
No? Well, tough crap, because you're getting it anyway. For real, I don't need my eggplant pics popping up on Facebook asking if I want to post them. No, I'm good, thanks. Microtransactions in console games. I get it in Facebook games and mobile games that are free, but in a game I've already paid $60 for, it's some BS. It puts people who don't want to pay more at a competitive disadvantage. They act like they're kindly offering us a shortcut, but microtransactions always make the game drag more, because they want to make you frustrated with a lack of progress, so you'll buy a booster pack or some crap. Same goes for pre-order bonuses and Day 1 DLC. They want to make you pay extra for that stuff that should already be in the game. Like, before I was fine paying like $5 for some good maps way after the game was released. Now though, they plan out selling you the game in pieces. It's ridiculous. Also, the games that make you grind so much, you're willing to buy whatever the frick it is. Frick the game industry, man. Microsoft buying out Skype. Skype has turned into a crappier version of the retired MSN. I exclusively use Discord now. There's actually a German word for this whole concept. Verschlimmbesserung, meaning an improvement that makes something worse. I'd say the iPhone, and now Pixel losing the headphone jack, is a great example of this. I think some video game patches are examples as well, when the balance or mechanical changes alter something you enjoyed about a game. Whatever the frick they did to honeycomb cereal. I bought one box and I'm never buying it again. New bigger honey taste, my butt.
Yes. Why? Why would you do such a horrible thing to a delicious cereal?
Let me usher you into a paradise known as the Whole Foods Bar. This was a bar that was perfect in my opinion. It's a bar that is situated right in the middle of Whole Foods. They serve wine and beer, and all around the magnificent island of a bar is the wine and beer section full of anything you could possibly want. All you had to do was walk over and pick one of the hundreds of anything, and the bar will open it for you and serve it in a glass. Not only that, but you could grab any protein and almost anything else from the grocery store, with a beer or wine in hand, mind you, and bring it back and have the bar staff cook it for you for free. Crab? Done. Meatloaf? Cooked and ketchuped. Not only that, but they had amazing specials. A beer and a pizza for $2? $10. It didn't matter what the beer was. Beer and wings, beer and burger, etc. It was amazing. Awesome bartenders that knew what they were doing. Awesome patrons who were friendly. Actually got my job as an associate architect by meeting someone there. Awesome atmosphere. And while I drank, the girlfriend can go shopping and then join me afterwards. But they wrecked it. They remodeled, which is a fancy way of saying that they were removing all of the awesome things that we liked and just turned it into a smaller restaurant with 15 seats in total. You can only order from the restaurant and can't bring in grocery food or beer or wine. They turned over their entire staff, prices went up, and specials are no longer a thing. God. This is in Florida when I lived there. Also, the way I understood it, they were either profiting or at the very least breaking even depending on the time of year. I think the bar was supposed to be set up as a loss leader originally anyway, but it actually ended up doing very, very well, so they'd been talking about expanding it for a while. They first added a fee of $2.50 to cook whatever, which is fine, I understand that, but the rest of it sucked. I do not shop at Whole Foods anymore, it was out of the way and the prices aren't the best. I'm sure they lost a lot of other customers like me. Well, having the workers cook the food you just bought off the shelf sounds way too good to be true in the first place. Apple Magic Mouse. When you could use AA batteries, it was perfect. Then they swapped that for internal rechargeable batteries. Okay, so far so good, but then they put the fricking charger point underneath the mouse. Some F-wit designer at Apple didn't want to put the charging point on the front of the mouse so that you could actually use it while it charges, because people might end up using it as a corded mouse. They deliberately disabled the mouse for the entire time you have to charge it, meaning you have to use a second mouse while you charge it. Unbelievable. The Windows Tile Start menu. If I'm on a PC, I don't need a menu that looks like it's built for tablets. And if I'm deploying 15,000 Windows machines to be used solely for business, 0 of them need Candy Crush installed. If I'm building PCs to play video games on, 0 of them need Candy Crush installed. No PCs should ever have Candy Crush on them. Keurig Cup verification. Every time YouTube changes its layouts. I rage every time, yet I can't even remember what the last layout looked like. Every update from Outlook or Hotmail in the past few years.
iTunes used to be awesome, but literally every update to it has left it worse and worse.
The last non-horrible one was in 2013. They've made it so much more complicated to download old CDs and then put them in a device. Guys, I'm not rebuying hundreds of albums again. Quit being jerks. I remember when iTunes let you stream your library. You could go to work and just connect back home and listen to all your music. It was amazing. Yeah, we built up libraries based on our friends' libraries and just had mega collections, but it was amazing. I don't even know if they do library sharing anymore. Shapes. It's a national meme in Australia. The new ones are absolutely disgusting. Fortunately, they decided to restock the old ones. Thank God that some companies have humans running them. I remember living in the Southern Hemisphere, and along with Tim Tams, shapes were a culinary highlight of existing there. Glad to hear that they heard sense. Netflix changing their ratings from stars to match percentage. I hate it. Also, when you're looking at titles, the trailer starts playing right away. I hate that too.
I hate the percentages too, but even worse, the plots they give. She never knew that becoming herself could change everything about the world around her. I just made that up, but that's basically the amount of information they give you about almost every movie. And yet they have no problem showing plot-sensitive information in the little trailer reel that autoplays without a choice in the matter. I get that there's a statute of limitations for spoilers on old movies, but come on! There's an award-winning trilogy on Netflix with a character who dies in the first movie, and yet they show up in the first clip of their stupid autoplay reel for the second movie. Like, oh geez, I wonder who comes back to life now. I'd be annoyed if I was watching those for the first time. UIs that have all of the options and buttons tucked away to make it look clean and minimal. It's like every designer is afraid of showing users more than 8 buttons at a time, even if it isn't practical. CNN and BBC autoplay videos. CNN is particularly egregious because the video follows you as you scroll through the article. Replacing the waxed paper wrappers on Reese's peanut butter cups with plastic ones prevented them from drying out, but it also made them wet and oily. Give me the old, slightly crunchy, slightly bloomed version any day. Also, Hershey's chocolate bars are nothing like the ones from the 1970s, partially for similar reasons. Removing the broken footstep tracker in Pokemon Go. It worked originally, so instead of fixing it, they spent months making a crappier one. That whole app is filled with improvements. They were so focused on adding codes to prevent third-party tracking that they made the game unnecessarily more demanding on your hardware. Walks out of a building? Are you a passenger? Switching Coke from glass bottles to plastic. Plastic is the worst when drinking it. Glass is the best and keeps it cooler. Aluminium cans are second best. Plastic last by far. Costco smoothies. Growing up, they were amazing. Suddenly, this year they came out with a healthier version that tasted like crap. Such a bummer. Why did they do that? Obviously, this 2-foot-long hot dog, greasy pizza, and syrupy smoothie isn't healthy. What in the frick? What family secret was finally spilled in your family? That my parents had to get married. They'd always told us they got married in 1961, but it was 1962, 3 months before my sister was born. What's amusing is that my father was an accountant who was insanely fast with math. Whenever he was asked how many years they'd been married, he'd be off by 1. My mother would correct him through clenched teeth, and then my father would nod and agree. When my paternal grandfather died, the federal government reached out to do a state funeral. He had been career Army and a colonel, so we didn't question it. Then the funeral came and they went all out. Huge procession, people showing up who were really big names, like heads of departments, senators, retired senators, people from the CIA and State Department. It was nuts, and we were all super confused. Turns out he was a key dude in the OSI during World War II, and when the OSI splintered into the CIA and Secret Service, he went the Secret Service route. He wasn't on White House detail, but instead worked in a covert office that dealt with counterfeiting and currency. He went blind when I was a toddler and retired from the Army. For whatever reason, he told no one about all his covert work with the OSI and Secret Service, and the only person who knew, my grandmother, was sworn to secrecy and never told anyone. My father grew up thinking he was just a colonel working on base. Only after his death were we given all sorts of cool crap like publications by him, lectures given by him, and all kinds of things from various things he did and was known for.
All I knew him as was a blind old man who was perpetually smoking, drinking, and being a crotchety geezer. Turns out he was a bad mother effer, and all but none of us knew. My great-grandmother wasn't actually Mexican, but was rather adopted by a Mexican family from a Chinese family who was being kicked out of Mexico when railroad construction was over. She always had more typically Asian features but only spoke Spanish, and it was never really questioned. 23andMe is a hell of a thing. My mother is kid number 7 out of 10. My aunt, kid number 4, who was born in 1945, did her DNA test and found out that she has a different father from everyone else. She was devastated. There was always a rumor that there was an affair, but nobody talked about it. She has so many questions, but nobody's alive to answer her. My grandparents are first cousins. An uncle on the same side of the family is in prison for the assassination of a Mexican presidential candidate in the 90s. His family still says he was framed and is innocent. Oh boy, way to lead with a kind of eyebrow-raising secret and then completely overshadow it with a tale of murder and corruption. Has anyone made a movie about your family? This is kind of messed up, but my parents told me my mum had a bad back because I pushed on her spine during birth. This is what I thought all my childhood. I think I was in my teens when my older brother told me my dad pushed my mum during an argument and she fell and had to have surgery. I thought I ruined my mum's back my entire childhood, and those SOBs let me believe it. When I was 5 years old in 1988, Santa Claus left a Nintendo on our front porch. It was wrapped in newspaper, and my parents had no idea who gifted it to us. My dad particularly tried to figure it out. He was always suspicious that it had been a family friend. It was by far the best gift of the year, and we played it all the time throughout our childhood. My dad died in 2004. Last Christmas, my mum explained that she was the one who had bought it and surreptitiously placed it on the front porch. My dad really likes to be in control of things and had forbidden the purchase. She knew better. She didn't tell a soul for 30 years. Thanks, Mum. I see a lot of stories about people finding out that who they thought were their parents weren't the people raising them, and this one is a little bit different. My dad always thought his father who raised him wasn't his biological dad, and the father thought the same. He was treated terribly by his father because the father was told he couldn't have children and my father was born prematurely, but at a healthy weight. So everyone assumed that my grandmother had an affair and got pregnant with my dad. It was to the point where after my grandmother died, my grandfather failed to even mention to his new wife that he had a son and grandchild, me. Years later, my dad gets an ancestry DNA test for him and me. He finds out that his dad was actually his bio-dad. It was shocking and sad. Found out that my grandma had a baby as a teenager and was forced to give him up for adoption by my great-grandparents. 40 years later, he found us. The same thing happened to my mom. I'm 33 now. Older half-brother is roughly 35. I hold hope that I'll meet him one day. My father's brother killed 4 people when he was in high school. My father was the one who found out and told the police. My de facto uncle, he and my aunt never married but have been together since well before I was born, with a few hiccups, has a child with another woman. It became common knowledge when the girl was 6 and was starting to understand the situation. At first, it was a bit scandalous, but she's been welcomed with open arms by my entire family, including her half-siblings' maternal grandparents. She's treated the same as all the other kids her age. Her half-sister, my cousin, has a daughter the same age and they're best friends and go to the same high school. Totally inseparable, technically aunt and niece. She comes to all our family events and she's an awesome kid. We're all stoked to have her in our family. After my mum died, I found out the real story behind my grandparents' marriage. She came to my father's country to visit some of her relatives. Met my father, and after just 1 week, she asked him to marry her so she could stay in the country. My father accepted because he had no one else, and his parents were pressing him to get married already. But the highlight of the story is that over some time, the two of them fell in love with each other. Their love only grew over the time, and they were really happy together. My mother spent her last days very ill, and she would accept only my father by her bedside. He swears to this day that she was an angel sent from God to take care of him. I'm shocked that they got married just like that, out of the blue, and ended up loving each other so deeply. I can only hope to have as good and loving marriage as they had. My uncles are infamous criminals who killed multiple people. I thought they bred dogs. Well, they may have also bred dogs. Ha! My mum's family, she always heard that her uncles were at Ohio State since she was a teenager, and never learned until she was in her 30s that it was actually Ohio State Penitentiary because they were in the mob. About a month ago, my mother-in-law's 88-year-old sister revealed on her deathbed that her husband's best friend was actually the father of all 4 of her children. Her husband was a bullying grade-A jerk by all accounts. While everyone was shocked, no one was saddened by this news.
Did the friend know?
Yes, he contacted with all 4 of the children, the youngest is in his 50s, within hours of her passing. Also, one of the son's first comments was,
"Is that why he gave me his old car when I needed one back in college?"
My uncle served in Vietnam. While over there, his troop found a baby that had been orphaned or abandoned. They're not sure. My uncle was shipping back to Australia soon and wanted to adopt him, but my aunt said no. They'd only been married about 4 months when he was drafted, so while I don't agree with my aunt's actions and generally don't like her as a person, I can understand why she said no. My uncle's troop found a family to raise the baby, and that's the story the whole family knows. To clarify, I'm child-free, and if my husband was in this situation, I'd probably say no as well. It's not the fact she said no to adopting the kid that makes me dislike her for this, it's her reason. She's very racist against Asian people. Doesn't matter what part of Asia, she hates them. She's the kind of person who will yell, "Go back to your country," at random strangers who even vaguely look like they might have Asian ancestry. She also cut off contact with my cousin, her daughter, because my cousin's husband is half Japanese. She said in front of my family with no shame that if the kid hadn't been Asian, she would have said yes to adopting him. The secret is that my uncle and some other guys from his troop stayed in contact with the family and the kid, sending them money every month to help raise him and then help him go to university, and eventually helped him and his adoptive family move to Australia in the late 90s. My aunt and the rest of my family had no idea all this time. It only came out when my aunt and uncle divorced in 2017 and she had a forensic accountant go through their bank records. She worked at a bank for like 40 years and always noticed the money missing, but his reasons were always justified. Since we all know now, my uncle has introduced some of us to this guy and his family. They're really lovely people. It sounds like everyone won at some point in the story. The kid won by not being adopted by this woman and being financially supported. The family won by being introduced to the kid later in life, and the uncle won by divorcing the aunt. Everyone wins. We found out after my grandfather died that none of his 7 children with my grandmother were his, and that they all likely had different fathers. I only just recently heard about this, but my grandmother had gotten a little drunk with my dad and brother a month or so ago and started talking about our great-uncle Ferber. And from what I heard, he apparently killed quite a few people and buried them on some family-owned land in a swamp. The nanny I had when I was younger was actually my dad's attempted sister wife. She found out how bat-crap crazy he was and dipped. He's into polygamy and nearly had her convinced to be their third and everything. She came to her senses, thank God. He's not a nice man. My great-grandfather didn't die of cancer. He died from complications after being shot when one of his businesses was being robbed. Or so we'd heard. He also spent a lot of time in Atlantic City. He also had a lot of partners in Teamsters and other unions in coal country. Also, everyone called him Smiling Tony, but his name wasn't Tony. He died in the 60s, long before my time, but when my great-grandmother died 20 years ago, a very old guy showed up to the funeral in a white suit and all of the oldest people in my family kissed his hand. When I asked, no one knew who he was. My grandfather moved his family away from central Pennsylvania in the late 60s and disconnected from all of this. But there it is. I always wonder how long it will be before my neighbors figure out their daddy is a dealer or a little crooked. There was that one time in Christmas he got shot in the leg stealing from a farm and hobbled around for weeks. He's trying to go straight right now. I heard an absolute blowout fight like 2 months ago. As soon as the bigger kids left with the grandparents, the missus was smoking ice in the house, and he screamed at her about not doing that in the house, not wanting the kids to see. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below, and if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. When I was 28, I found out that my dad was not my biological father. The news came out via the following. My dad was battling depression and a number of other serious problems, so I had just flown home to try and take care of him and rescue him from my mum's wrath. My mum had verbally and emotionally beaten him down during their entire relationship. He loved her so much and he tolerated it. Well, during a solemn walk with my dad, as I tried to help him out, he confided that he's not my bio-dad. And he went on to tell me that he knew this all along, but my mum lied to him and tried to convince him that he was my bio-dad. He knew he wasn't, but he wanted to play the role. When I was 10 years old, my mum finally confessed this to him, and he was worried that upon hearing the news officially, he'd somehow let this affect his relationship with me. So when I was 28 years old, during this walk with my dad, as he pours out the story to me, he frames it by telling me that his two most proud moments in his life are 1. How I turned out and his raising me, and 2. That he had completely forgotten about the news my mum told him earlier in that day, when I was 10, about him not being my bio dad, and that it was only upon tucking me in at night, when I was 10, that it briefly crossed his mind. It was at that point that he knew nothing would ever come between us and our father-son relationship would be as awesome as ever. He also confided that my mum did hard substances while pregnant with me, and this broke his heart to witness firsthand. They were very poor. My dad grew up in a foster home without parents. My mum grew up with 6 siblings and ill-equipped parents. She dropped out of 9th grade, whereas all of her other siblings dropped out earlier. Many of them are barely literate. I'm now mid-30s and tragically, my dad ended things in mid-March 2020, right as COVID was hitting. I was out of the country at the time, but immediately flew 30 hours, 30-minute layover, and made it in time for his funeral. I do everything in his honor. My grandmother recently died. She was famous in our town for her amazing cooking and catering, in particular her turkey dinners. Notably, her gravy was absolutely amazing, so delicious. She had a heart attack several years ago and her near-death experience convinced her to share some of her secret recipes with me, all except for her gravy recipe. When she died this spring, I was going through her pantry and found an entire bucket of KFC gravy mix. She was literally using KFC gravy mix as a base to make her incredible gravy. Huge scandal. Faking gravy has got to be the most charming family secret out of all the horrible crap in this story group. My great-great-grandfather was exiled and banned from Missouri for being a sheep thief. We went to my grandmother's for Christmas dinner like we did every year, and my uncle drank too much and kind of hinted that he had an affair with my mother. A couple of months and 2 DNA tests later, we found out my sister is actually his daughter. My dad never spoke to his brother again, and of course my parents got divorced, and I needed a lot of therapy and chocolate. God, we're trash. Great-grandparents' 60th anniversary party at a hotel ballroom, with my cousins and second cousins who hadn't seen each other in years. My mum and I were talking to my grandfather. My mum said, "Wow, I haven't seen Chuck, Fred, and Claire in years." Me? "No kidding. When do you think we'll get a group this big back together again?" Mum said, "Gramps' birthday is in 6 months. We'll see some people then." 6 months? Isn't it his 60th? There was a long silence, and then Gramps said, "Huh, I never thought about that." My grandfather was 60 when he realized his parents had a shotgun wedding. I was 35 when my mother finally admitted to me that she had been lying about who my birth father was. She waited until after I'd reached out to his other children, and we all thought we were siblings. He later confirmed I wasn't his. She refused to tell me who my biological father really was. When my sister was diagnosed with cancer and her survival chances were low, it inevitably came out that she wasn't my sister. My parents must have felt we should all know the truth just in case. She survived treatment and will always be my sister. I found out my uncle is actually my brother, but my mum had him when she was so young that my grandparents raised him. Due to 23andMe, my dad learned that his recently deceased father wasn't actually his bio dad. It wasn't a situation related to grandma cheating either, it was a donation, so they knew this was the case his entire life. Pretty crazy that they never told him. His parents didn't pass until he was 65 years old. Talk about a curveball. Well, we all knew that there would be a bunch of infidelity and surprise relatives in this particular story grouping, so excuse me for choosing one of the few that wasn't depressing. My mum and older brother are not biologically related to me. My bio mum died sometime after I was born, leaving me, my sister, and my dad behind. My brother was the one that told me. My parents never told me because they wanted to protect me from the truth, but my brother thought that was a bullcrap reason for me not to know. I don't know if my parents know that I know the truth, but I don't want to bring it up either. My mum had immigrated here along with my older brother when he was a kid. My dad also immigrated here, and my sister and I were born after he came. I don't know much about our family history beyond that. My brother revealed this info when I was about 18. He isn't the type to lie about something like this. He also said my sister is apparently aware of the truth because she has a memory of my bio mum being in physical contact with her. I don't think too differently about my family because of this. My mum is still my mum. My grandma didn't drive. I thought she couldn't, but it was just never discussed. One day when I was maybe 7 or 8, I'd been trying to get anyone, to drive me to the store for candy. We were visiting my aunt and uncle. Grandma lived with them. They had bitter honey at the local store, which I could no longer get at home. But no one would take me to the store. Finally, I said I'd just ask Grandma, and my cousin chimes in with, "Grandma can't drive."
Oh, you bet your sweet butt I can drive. They just don't let me.
Grandma had overheard and she was in high dudgeon. But that's all that was said about it, and my aunt finally took me to the store, so I forgot about it. Years later, when I'd just gotten my license, I asked my mum what was up with Grandma not driving. She explained that during Prohibition times, Grandma bootlegged alcohol for moonshiners. She was very successful at it. She was so successful at it that when the moonshiners were finally busted, even though the revenuers never caught my grandma, her license was suspended by the state to never be reissued. Later in life, she was told she could petition for it back, but it came with an admission of guilt or some such. She told them to go to hell. The scars on an elder family's wrists were not from a botched attempt at their own life. They were from her mum trying to protect herself and her kids from the approaching Red Army. That was at the end of World War II in Germany. This made it so much worse. My dad fathered a child in high school. His side of the family knew, and my mum. We found out years after he had died that we have a half-sister. Here's how we found out. Dad got a girl pregnant and she decided to go it alone. She moved across the state and had my half-sister. She met a guy, married, and he raised her like she was his own. They had no other children. She didn't reveal my dad's identity until after he died. Apparently she contacted my grandma and mum, but they kept it from us. Years later, half-sister has a kid with medical issues and needs to know the family medical history. She contacts mum and grandma, who again don't tell us. Meanwhile, after Dad died, my uncle had prints made of a favorite picture of Dad. He gets them framed and gives them to all us kids as well as my grandma, aunts and uncles. Mum gets a picture to our half-sister after their secret meeting. Fast forward another few years, my brother and his roommate live in a large nearby city and hit a bar and pick up and bring home some ladies to sleep over. The next morning, my half-sister sees a photo of my dad on the mantle, turns white and asks, "Whose picture is that?" "That's my roommate's dad. He died a long time ago." "I need to talk to your roommate." She lived her entire life across state, hundreds of miles. Her friend was going to school in a large city near our hometown. She was visiting and they decided to go to a bar. They got picked up by my brother and his roommate. That's how we found out. My brother went to my grandma and asked. After my grandfather passed, we found out that he'd fathered a child when he was posted in Italy during World War II. He never knew. His mother intercepted any letters from the Italian girl. He came home, met and married my grandmother, and had 4 children. I forget who in the family found out and how. It's crazy to think that we have a whole Italian family out there. My oldest aunt is 77, so this kid would be at least 79 by now, I would think. We've considered doing the DNA testing, but some family members aren't comfortable with how those companies could use the information. It's a really sad story, but if his mother hadn't intercepted the letters, I wouldn't exist. It's a weird place to be in emotionally. My sister cheated on her husband throughout her entire marriage to the point that all 3 of her kids have different biological fathers. That my grandfather was an atomic soldier. Instead of sending him to fight in the Korean War, they sent him to Nevada, where, after having him turn away from the initial flash, he witnessed the mushroom cloud. After that was over, he was ordered to march to the detonation point, where he was unwittingly exposed to high amounts of radiation. Luckily for my family, my grandpa is now in his 90s, even after a few cancer scares. And the rest of us, my mum, aunt, cousins, sister and I, are cancer-free and fairly healthy. But this is medical information that we really should have known earlier. What budget purchase ended up being your best buy ever? I was traveling in Japan and needed nail clippers. All I could find is this cheap pink Hello Kitty grooming kit. These clippers are the best I've ever owned. They have stayed sharp and functional for 20 years. I'm very protective of them. Everyone in the house knows you don't touch Dad's pink Hello Kitty nail clippers. And if you do, you perish. A guy said there were a bunch of bricks in his backyard he wanted to get rid of. $5 for all of them if you'd come and pick them up because they were larger than regular bricks and very heavy. I grabbed a friend and headed out because I needed some cheap bricks for the edging of my garden. Guy's house was across the river and in some really run-down looking neighborhood. Really glad I grabbed my friend at this point. We pull up and the guy is waiting outside. He looks like he's 80, but I know he must have been a 35-year-old guy who just smoked 10 packs a day. So the guy takes us to his backyard and shows us the pile of bricks, which turns out to be 50-plus antique Louisville fire bricks. So I look at the guy and tell him, I'll take half of them, and as payment I'll give you $20 and some advice. And of course, the guy is looking at me like I'm an idiot, but he accepts my money and helps me and my friend load up about 30 bricks. After I close my truck and get in the car to drive off, I tell him to Google the antique fire bricks and adjust his Craigslist listing. I went back to look at the listing a few days later, and he had changed the price from $5 for the whole pile to $5 per brick, which was the going rate at the time. Nowadays, they go for $20 per brick. Best buy ever. A seed packet from the dollar store. While in college, my boyfriend and I were broke. Really broke. But I still wanted to do something to celebrate spring. We were getting a few cheap things at the dollar store when I noticed they were selling these seed packets from a big old bin that you had to dig through. 4 for $1. No tax. I immediately begged to buy one despite our strict budget. Boyfriend was incredulous I'd want to buy sketchy seeds, but dutifully handed me a quarter. I ended up picking out tomatoes. Well, we got home and I carefully placed about 3 seeds in washed out cans. I watered them and watched them sprout. I loved tending to my little garden. I ended up with 3 beautiful, huge tomato plants. It was a bumper crop, more than we could eat. I sold the extra produce to my classmates. I made about $25. Good seeds. For the umpteenth time, the narrator is resisting the urge to buy a plot of land, some seeds, and live out his Stardew Valley dreams. Not yet, not yet. My dad bought me a flannel jacket for $2 from the equivalent of a dollar store in 1994. Wore it for everything you can think of. I wore it yesterday. Still going strong after 25 years.
It's amazing that the jacket held up, yes, but special kudos to you for still being able to fit in it for 25 years.
I was traveling from a different city straight into work, where my uniform was a white shirt with a conspicuously black bra. Wasn't stopping home, so I did stop on the first corner store I found and bought a $5 white bra that looked roughly my size, as they had nowhere to try them on, just to wear for one night at work. 10 out of 10, comfiest bra I ever owned. Wore it every day of my life for about a year. It gave in at some point, but it was still a $5 bra. But gosh darn, I dream of the day when all of my bras fit that well. I too have a bra of mystery. First strike, I brought it from a grocery store. Second strike, it was marked down to $2 and plastered with stickers reading, "Final sale, no returns. We're not liable if this kills you. I'm sure there are people who love you," and the like. Third strike, upon ringing it through, the cashier did a double take at the screen, looked at me with great concern, and asked if I was sure I wanted to buy it. After failing to self-combust and send me straight to hell, it wound up being one of the nicest bras I ever had. Wore it for 2 years before the inevitable underwire chest shanking. I still wonder what they thought was wrong with it. I was giving these college-aged women a lift ride. One asks how that Craigslist thing went, so my ears perked up. The other says something like, "He complained it went back too far, just don't put it back so far, duh." Eventually I deduce that they're talking about a recliner, which I've been looking for one for some time now. I interject and ask about it. The lady has a Lazy Boy electric recliner she just wants $20 for. I'm like, listen, I know it's sketchy, but if you've got Craigslist randos in your house, Lyft at least gave me a background check. We pull up, I end the ride and follow these ladies into their house. I knew I wanted it as soon as I laid eyes on it, so this college chick is helping me stuff a recliner into my back seat, and all I can think this is how Buffalo Bill kidnapped that girl in Silence of the Lambs. $20 for a recliner so lazy it reclines for me. The seller listed several 2-month-old kittens on Craigslist, first come, first serve. We pull up to an area of town known for its high crime and substance addicts at like 11 at night. Seller plops this impossibly tiny kitten into my hand wordlessly. She was only 3 weeks old, and the seller gave us some crap about how her sister's cat just had kittens, and she didn't want to make a whole new post about it. Kittens were listed for $10. The seller was asking for $15. All we had was a $20. I looked at my now fiancé, and we knew no one else was going to take care of this cat. We drove that kitten home in a laundry basket. Nearly 3 years later, that kitten is attached to my hip, and I can't think of a better $20 investment. I too bought my kitty for $20 on Craigslist from a legit crystal addict. I'd never had a cat before, and this little meow factory has been my best friend ever since. A no-label old beat-to-crap vinyl acetate record with handwritten "That'll be the day" on it, paid $1. Ended up being a live Buddy Holly recording. I sold it for $970. I bought a blanket in Mexico in 1986 for $5. I still have it and it's super soft and comfy. It's been abused, washed, and other things, and it's still in great shape. $12 rain boots at Value Village. I've thrashed these things living in rural Alaska, and they're still totally watertight 2 years later. Stain removers from the dollar store are surprisingly effective. I bought a tub of toothpaste called Right Clean, and then when I looked closely, the cap said Colgate, so I'm guessing companies sell their excess supply to dollar stores and just relabel the contents. I work as a day laborer at a plant that made mayonnaise. We probably made 30 different brands of mayo, from store brands to national brands. They would stop the filling machine, we would change the bottles, caps, and labels, then keep right on running, putting the same stuff out of the same vats into all the different bottles. I heard the same thing from a person who worked in a green bean factory. They'd just slap a different label and keep it rolling. I bought a small turtle from a gas station in Florida when I was in the 1st grade. Max proudly lived until the end of my senior year. I am loving all the cute pet stories coming out of this story grouping. Honestly, I just assumed it would be all Walmart and eBay finds. At the end of a long road trip with some mates, I brought a $20 pair of sunglasses in a gas station just outside Chicago. They fit me better than any pair of sunglasses ever did or ever will, and they made me look awesome. For years, I constantly received compliments about them and was asked where I got them. I lost them after 5 long years and have hated myself for it ever since. They were so no-name they didn't even have a brand name on them at all. So I have no idea who made them. I have no way of finding that gas station either. I've literally spent hundreds of bucks trying to find sunglasses that came close to that perfect fit and style, but I can't. I randomly found a wedding videographer online and booked him for a very affordable rate for my wedding, assuming it wouldn't be very good quality. 2 weeks after the wedding, he emails me a high-quality, well-edited video. He had a drone I hadn't noticed because he was outside of the venue getting B-roll with it before I even started getting ready for my big day. I was floored, and now I recommend him to everyone who ever plans to get married, ever. To update, he's definitely upped his prices since then, and rightfully so, because he does great work. He did the videography from my wedding last summer. I drive cars so old they all still have tape decks. I bought this fake cassette tape with a headphone-style plug that comes off it. You put the tape in the player just like it was a cassette and plug the jack into your phone, and it uses the car's speaker system as an external speaker for the phone. I was so skeptical of it working because it was all of $5, and I've been using it at least 10 years and it works perfectly and beautifully. Plus bonus side-eye every time I pull it out to use it with someone new in the car. I bought a $17 toaster about 20 years ago and it's still going strong. I went to buy a used lawnmower and ended up buying their very old dog for $10. He had never been allowed indoors, never rode in a car, went to a park, or had a bath. We had a good 5 years of firsts. Best $10 I ever spent. I bought a button-down shirt from the thrift store in the mid-90s and I still wear it today. The shirt is obviously even older. It doesn't have much wear on it either. I think it's made of rayon or something else. The brand is Kmart. They don't make them like they used to. A little $40 speaker set for my bedroom TV I got in 2006 and still works great in 2019. I bought a fake wood, plastic mantel clock from Value City for about $10 because I needed something for my first apartment. I received a surprising number of compliments on it and was asked more than once if it was a family heirloom because it looked so old. It also lasted for about 10 years until some movers broke it. I was kind of proud of displaying that stupid cheap clock. I was in a market in Shanghai, one of those ones that attracts foreigners with knockoffs of nice brands, where you're supposed to haggle a bit with the store owner. Walked into an electronics store looking for a portable speaker. Negotiated the store owner down over the JBL speaker that basically was the size of a thermos. I think she originally wanted 200 yuan for it, and I got it for 125. The exchange rate was about 6.5 yuan for $1, so it was about $21. The owner went out back and got a blank white box and an envelope. Inside the box was a blank speaker without decals. Decals were in the envelope. She then proceeded to put the decals on the speaker in front of me, using tweezers for precision. This was my very first time in China, so it really caught me off guard. The speaker is actually amazing, very loud, 6 to 8 hours battery life, and perfect for storing in a cup holder. I mostly use it on a golf course, which is perfect. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. We bought an Ellis Island boat tour in New York from one of the guys on the streets. We were led into a van and treated extremely well, so we weren't immediately sketched out too badly. We don't know New York, so we ended up driving 20 minutes through Manhattan by 3 men to an apparently abandoned sketchy dock with no one else there. That's when we were convinced we were being scammed or sold into human trafficking. Gave us a post-it note with a number and they said to go around the abandoned factory to the pier and they were waiting for us. So we took our naive tourist butts around the building, alone, expecting nothing, and they would just pull off and scam us. Sure enough, we turned the corner and there was a big boat with a bunch of people and it was legit. We had an amazing tour and a lot of fun with free food and drinks. So overall, a great decision, but in hindsight, we should have been murdered or at least scammed.
I risked a huge box of magic cards. I spent around $200. It easily came out to about $2,000 or $3,000 worth. This box was just a random pickup on the internet from Craigslist.
My best purchase of magic cards was a store under new management. I went in with my 2 elementary school-aged sons, as a mother that taught them to play, and I asked to purchase the 2 large boxes in bulk. But because they had not had time to catalog their cards, they agreed on 10 cents apiece. At least 2 of the cards combined were valued at $80, and I bought hundreds. It's been some years since I've played, at least 3 or 4 years since I've purchased any. I wonder how much they're valued at, but I don't have the heart to part from them. I started playing in '97, and I have cards prior to that. Fugly or sad and misshapen potted plants from the grocery store. They just need some love, and it's so fun to see them grow. This person is a dark mirror of the narrator who consistently buys nice plants and proceeds to kill them all over a period of weeks. Teach me your secrets, internet person. A $27 dashcam. I got it off Amazon. Its shaper image included an SD card and was $27. I thought it was going to be a waste. It wasn't. I have it on whenever I drive. Turns on automatically. Records automatically. You can turn auto rewrite on or off. Has a high-quality camera, infrared LEDs for nighttime driving, and the mounting mechanism works great. It's stable and has never fallen. It's not 4K recording, but it's 1080, high 120 FPS, and was $27. When some others can run up into the high hundreds, 10 out of 10 would buy again. 10 out of 10 would gift to someone. It actually works great and was $27. My dog was a stray, adopted by a couple but returned because he was too high energy. So his adoption fees were 50%, the best $45 I've ever spent. I went to Mexico a few years back with my family, and it was our first time there. We only left the hotel once because it was so gosh darn hot. On that day, after visiting an ancient temple, we decided to go to a cenote to swim and cool off. We arrived at the bus station and this kind of sketchy taxi driver approached us and asked where we wanted to go. My father mentioned a very popular cenote, but the taxi driver recommended a quieter place and said he'd do it for half price, even though it was already dirt cheap. For some reason, my father agreed, which I thought was mad, so me and my family got in his taxi and drove off. We were riding down the freeway when he starts indicating left. I see no road where he's indicating. We turn off onto a dirt track and into the jungle. For about 10 minutes, we were getting deeper and deeper into the jungle until we reach a house. My father is told to get out and pay at this small shack, and the rest of us aren't allowed out of the car. 5 minutes pass, and by this time, we're freaking out in the car. I didn't really feel like getting kidnapped or anything, but my father returns and we continue into the jungle. Soon we reach a clearing with a few people smoking around a table, and a couple with swimsuits on. Now, I'm a bit more relaxed because there are other customers there. After getting changed, we have a short walk to this beautiful, crystal-clear cenote with overhangs and plants hanging down. It was amazing. We got out and thought money well spent, but then we were led on a tour around 4 other cenotes where we swam under bats hanging in caves and learnt about the history of the cenotes. To top it off, I got to jump off a 10-foot drop into a pool where I could see the bottom about 20 feet below the surface. Best experience we had in Mexico, and I'd love to go back, but I don't think I've ever been so frightened as I was going down that deserted dirt road. Went to a garage sale. There was a little girl in charge. She's like 12. I don't know crap about turntables, but she has a set on a table. I ask how much, and she tells me $20. I ask her if they work, and she tells me she has no idea. Her dad got new ones and wanted to get rid of these. I wait for Dad, and she tells me he's sleeping. She says, "Dude, just take them." I'm like, no, $20 can't be right. Maybe $200? She looks at me like I'm stupid. Fine, I'll take them for $20. I drive straight to the pawn shop and see what I can get for them, or if they even work. They frickin' work. The guy looks up prices and comes back with a $1,200 offer. The best $20 I've ever spent. I bought this shirt from a market for $5. It fits so darn well I've started using it as my main shirt. Knockoff North Face hiking shoes in Vietnam. They cost me $20. Kicked the crap out of them and they're still going strong. Bought some Britney Spears tickets in a back alley near the Phillips Arena, downtown Atlanta, from this sketchy guy. Our dumb butts were all excited because it was a great deal for the seating. Keep in mind, this is when tickets were printed from home, and they're huge to scan. The pair that we brought were the OG Ticketmaster tickets, you know, the tiny pair that you had to wait at FYE in the mall for. I got in line and go through the main door and they don't scan. Frick. We knew we were scammed immediately. Then they physically examine our tickets and say, "I don't know why these aren't scanning, but your seats are that way." Walk all the way down to our numbered section and there's one guy sitting in a chair by this massive wall with a single door to walk through. Homeboy physically examined our ghetto tickets. He's like, never seen these before. But he said, "This way, please," and I'll be damned. We're seated in the section where the local businesses buy the sweets and crap for their employees. Food and alcohol was free. We had phenomenal seats and got a free shirt and program. I still can't believe it happened. Not my purchase, but still one of the best. My brother gifted me a Snuggie one year for Christmas. I had painstakingly tracked down a bootleg album he wanted, and he got me a buy one, get one free Snuggie. I didn't speak to him for weeks. I've routinely used that damn Snuggie for every camping trip I've been on for the last 7 years, and I'll tell you it's become the most useful gift I've ever gotten. I bought official PlayStation wireless headphones for €20 a few years ago. They usually cost about €70 brand new. I thought it was a sketchy sale, but nope, they're fine and I still use them to this day. I got an adjustable phone mount at the dollar store when I had an iPhone 4. Still use the same one with my iPhone X. Well, that has to be the only case in recorded history of an iPhone accessory not being made redundant after 1 or 2 generations. $17 Target brand boat shoes. I bought them about 6 years ago and I just wore them randomly for things like going to the grocery store or running down to my car. Then I found they were great practice shoes for disc golf. They lasted 1.5 years of planting and twisting on concrete before they finally folded. Went back and they've been discontinued for years. Rest in peace. Target continually changes their clothing section, so if you like something, buy multiples of it, because it'll be gone or rebranded in like 6 months. Costco Fluffy Flannels. It feels like a chinchilla is hugging you, and I've had mine for 3 years with no signs of wearing down, despite almost daily use in the northeast winters. My wife got this fluffy fleece blanket from Costco, short on one side, long on the other, and oh my fricking god, I let nobody touch it but me. Flight cargo escort for discounted tickets. I flew to Shanghai from New York for about $200 total, on JAL business class. In return, I had to sign to take responsibility for cargo on the flight. I saw the cargo on the loading dock. It was a pallet covered in camouflage tarp. I received my tickets in person upon arrival at JFK. I'm pretty sure I helped traffic substances or weapons across borders. I can't remember the name of the company. Also, I don't think it exists anymore because it was sketchy as F. So, how much did you pay the smuggler? Nothing. He actually paid me $200. This bamboo back scratcher my wife got me for $3 like 15 years ago. It's right here next to me. I use it to scratch my back, gesticulate when I pontificate, fend off my cats, annoy my cats, and use as a tuning fork to make strange noises to annoy my wife. I joke that in the event of a house fire, this back scratcher is the only thing besides my wife and cats that I'd take with me. That's not a joke though, I really would go for it first. One of those square, window-sized box fans. Technically wasn't a purchase. I found it outside the dumpster of my junior year college apartment back in 2008. I'm a fan of airflow and white noise, so that fan ran 24 hours a day for nearly 11 years, outside of when I was away on vacations and for brief periods in winter. Most of that on the lowest setting, but I mean there were long stretches of literally months where it wasn't turned off. It died in 2019 when I can only assume some critical component just burnt out. I'll miss you, completely free thing that provided me a decade of light breeze and air circulation. Life skills teachers. What's the craziest misconception that you've had to clear up? I remember being in grade 5 or 6, having the first life skills class of our young and budding 10-year-old lives, having the wonders of life explained to us. We got to the point of explaining how babies were made, and one of my classmates got hung up on a point. He raised his hand and asked the teacher, "Is splooge hot?" We all blankly stared at the teacher, waiting for an answer. She replied with an awkward, broken answer, "Well, it's not boiling or anything like that," but before she could continue, the classmate restated the question. "But is it like hot, like temperature hot?" The teacher, still confused, tried her best. "Well, no, it's not like tea or coffee. Haven't you felt it before?" Now, with us being 10, I don't know what she was thinking, but some of us laughed, some were grossed out, but that classmate was almost angry. "No, I haven't. But is it hot?" She ended up explaining to us that it would only be as hot as your body is. It turns out the kid was just worried about hurting future partners with his boiling hot splooge. Boiling hot splooge, dibs on the band name. Taught human growth and development, aka life skills, to 5th and 6th grade boys. In our schools, you had to have a co-teacher with you, which happened to be my best friend as well. Mistake. The boys are encouraged to write out questions on note cards and turn them in, which makes them try to prank us and see if we'll read them out loud. Best one ever was, "What would happen if a man did the deed with a sheep?" To which my buddy replied, "Well, that would be bad." You always keep the good note cards. When I was little, the teacher passed out those note cards in life skills class so that we could anonymously ask questions and get the answers. I asked what a BJ was because I legitimately wanted to know. The teacher, I guess he was too embarrassed to answer, thought someone was trying to prank him and just laughed it off. I, to this day, still wonder what it is. But seriously, sometimes they sound like joke questions, but they aren't. Make a joke, sure, break the tension, but answer the question. I remember feeling so silly, like crap, everyone's laughing. I guess I'm really dumb for not knowing this already. The narrator considered reading out the Urban Dictionary description of said deed for the purposes of educating in this video. But let's be honest, if anything gets this video more likely to hit demonetization, it would be that. I'm gonna throw this one out there. They need to teach girls that urine doesn't come from the same hole that they do the deed in. I've dated 3 girls who were 20 plus at the time who never knew this. They actually went into the bathroom to see if I was lying to them. I'm curious how they thought the whole tampon thing worked. When I was in 4th grade, I thought men could only have 2 kids because they only had 2 testes. It made sense because every man I knew had 2 kids, except my buddy Greg had 2 siblings. Once I reached my revelation, I reasoned that Greg's mum must have cheated on his dad in order to have a 3rd kid. I would have just assumed Greg's dad had 3 testes. Taught in an inner-city classroom in Boston, these kids asked the best questions. Doesn't doing it in the butt cause cancer? I'd ask what HIV can lead to. Does it lead to blue waffle? I don't want to get that. Will Plan B work faster if you snort it? Good times. When my kids were in grammar school, a teacher came around and talked to them about their private places. For the next week or so, my daughters kept saying that they got hit in their privates. They were in 1st and 2nd grade, I think, so roughhousing was common, and I figured since it was a new phrase, they were using it as much as possible. Then one day, the youngest came in and said her sister wouldn't quit touching her in her privates. I was starting to freak out. I asked her to show me where her sister was touching. She pointed to her arm. I was flabbergasted and said, "How is that your privates?" She then informed me that the teacher who talked to them about bad touching said that a place that makes you feel uncomfortable was your privates, and that her sister was touching her arm and making her uncomfortable. After that, I got out my anatomy and physiology book from school and we had a much longer discussion about such things. My life skills teacher in high school told us stories about a female student she had a long time ago. The student got pregnant and was freaking out to our teacher not knowing what happened because she had apparently been taking birth control. My teacher was asking her the typical questions about her situation, how long she'd been taking them, among other things. Then later the girl mentions she had been taking her birth control pills up her hoo-ha. She figured that since the baby comes from there, that's where you take the pill. As a pharmacist, this is exactly why we put take 1 tablet by mouth daily or take 1 teaspoonful by mouth on the label. I had a mother pour an oral antibiotic suspension in her kid's ear for an earache once. I was a Peace Corps volunteer in a certain small sub-Saharan African country where life skills class was practically non-existent. Talking about that part of my life openly was a bit taboo, and misconceptions were everywhere. As the sole outsider in my village, I was assumed to be the local expert on everything, from computers to physics to world politics to calculus to, yes, doing the deed. There were so many myths, but one sticks in my mind because it was so bizarre, so prevalent, and I've never heard it anywhere else. Splooge is the only source of vitamin K, so girls must begin doing the deed at an early age to get proper nutrition. This was startling for a whole tangled mess of reasons. The cultural initiation rites that perpetuated the myth and coerced younger people to do the deed with men twice their age. The inverse relationship between prevalence of transmitted diseases and the degree of knowledge about preventing it, the enormous cultural pressure to marry young and have lots of babies, and the lack of knowledge about nutrition in general. Parents commonly ate balanced meals while their kids were only given a type of corn mesh, believing that this was the only thing necessary to help them go strong. Basically, my students were already stunted from malnutrition, facing a lot of pressure to have to do the deed, and laboring under mountains of misinformation about the deed. But then there was this additional myth telling them that they needed to start having the deed without protection as soon as possible so their bodies would develop normally. I held talks at my school to combat this, taught them how to put protection on correctly, and gave some additional talks about nutrition for good measure. Oh man, the discussions we had. I'm no life skills teacher, but I went to a very sheltered private school that did not teach basic life skills. It only went as far as covering puberty, so parents had to fill in the rest. And then my mum effed it up pretty badly. She started by describing the male anatomy, wang first, then ballsack. But she never said the word for that organ again, only it. It gets so hard it can go inside a woman. And the whole time, having never seen what an adult member looks like, I assume she means the ball bag goes into the hoo-ha as well. And since I'd only seen a baby eggplant from daycare where the ball bag was actually bigger than the eggplant, it made sense. I thought this for several years until a friend cleared that misconception up. I was also unaware of thrusting. I thought you just put it in and waited a bit. I'm not a health ed teacher, but back in 8th grade I saw a girl crying in the ladies' room. I walked over and asked her what was wrong, and she told me she was bleeding down there and she legitimately thought she had internal damage and was dying. I had a friend that this happened to. She hid the bloody undies for months and was convinced that she had dropped dead at any time. Fortunately, I was in Girl Scouts and they were pretty good about letting all of us know what to expect. I'm a development support worker at a treatment home for dual-diagnosed teenage boys. As my co-workers and I basically raise these kids, we regularly field life skills questions. When I was pregnant, these were my 2 favorites.
So when the baby's big enough, you'll just poop it out, right? Is it a puppy?
English teacher here. Okay, not life skills, but you'd be surprised about the blurted statements during the Romeo and Juliet unit. So I had one girl who honestly believed she couldn't get pregnant if she didn't climax. Had one boy who thought that humans basically stopped growing hair down there in the 1980s. The poor guy actually thought he was going to be ridiculed in gym class. Freshmen are sometimes horrifyingly underinformed. Believed that you could get acquired immunodeficiency syndrome by being gay, not having unprotected intercourse, but just by being homosexual. My life skills teacher only misinformed my health class further. Told us you have a 90% chance of getting an STD if you have premarital woohoo, women can't have climaxes, so it's not worth doing the deed if you're a girl. Adult magazines and websites cause men to be abusive. Ugh. She started the class by asking, "Raise your hand if you think people who have done the deed before marriage are going to hell." I went to a public school in Alabama, obviously. And literally nobody was surprised. Still, this story was posted 10 years ago. I wonder if there has been any more progress in that particular area, or if we're still more or less at square -1 in that state. The misconceptions that I, as a 25-year-old female life skills teacher, would not A. consider going to prom with you, or B. share my personal bedroom history with you. I've also had to disprove the following notions. that men can't get transmissible diseases, that blue waffle is a real common transmissible disease, that you can't get pregnant if you wash yourself down there after doing the deed, that you can't get pregnant if you drink a lot of Mountain Dew, that if you take all of the birth controls, pills, Depot, Implanon, etc., at once, not that any doctor would give them all to you, you're uber protected from pregnancy. Oh, and a really common one, that 2 rubbers are better than 1. And on and on and on. Mostly I spend a lot of time answering really basic but highly personal and potentially embarrassing questions from my anonymous question box. My friend goes around high schools to give talks and answer questions about doing the deed as a teacher to 16-year-old girls. A girl began to cry once and told the teacher, and the whole class, that she was a hermaphrodite. After calming her down and explaining it all, she agreed to answer more questions for those curious. Turns out she was just talking about her fun button and thought it was a tiny male member. Needless to say, my friend handled it so well, but the girl probably had to change schools afterwards. I know of a girl who didn't know where babies came from. This was a friend of mine's cousin who was pregnant, but her mum had always had C-sections with her kids. So when she was told about the natural method of birthing a child, she freaked out. Well, it comes out the same way it went in. You've got to be joking. How can a woman get to a stage in her life where she's pregnant and not know?
Before C-sections, we just kind of popped out. They even made a dramatic documentary called Alien.
You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. Well, kinda related. When I was little, I thought that maxi pads were meant so that a woman could pee themselves whenever they wanted. My dad and I were watching a commercial and I went on a tangent about how gross that was. He looked at me funny and said it was time we had a little talk. I was in a public bathroom in a large restaurant with my mother when I was approximately 10. As I was washing my hands, I noticed that there was a large metal dispenser on the wall for tampons $1 and napkins $1. As my mum was exiting her stall to come wash her hands too, I exclaimed, "Why would anyone pay $1 for a napkin when there's free napkins at their table?" I heard a lady in her stall snicker and my mum was a bit embarrassed. I knew what tampons and pads were, but I didn't know that napkin was a polite term for a pad. Maybe not exactly a misconception, but a girl asked me, "Is it true that when the man arrives, he pees in you as well?" It took all of my effort to not say something like, "Only if you ask him to." Probably wouldn't have gone over very well. I teach life skills to individuals with intellectual disabilities, so I get to clear up loads of crazy misconceptions. During my most recent one, I had to explain to a guy of relatively normal intelligence that girls do not have male anatomy down there. I watched his entire mind just explode to that new information. I'm pretty sure I changed his life. I know a girl in her 20s that honestly believed that males have an extra bone in their wang. She tried to defend herself by claiming that if it didn't, then why would it be called that when the guy was excited?
I mean, dogs literally have a bone in their member.
Many animals do. Also many primates, but for some reason it got lost during human evolution. By far the biggest and worst misunderstanding in life skills is the thought that not teaching kids about doing the deed makes it less likely that they'll get pregnant. During the talk at our school, one guy asked if one testy produced girl babies and the other produced boy babies. Looking back, it wasn't such a dumb question from the mind of a 10-year-old, but oh, how we laughed.
Nice little factoid, the Greeks believed this, and some tried to strangle the one that produced girls.
I'm a registered nurse. I was conducting a pre-op interview on a teenager who was going to have surgery. She was there with her mother, probably in her late 30s or early 40s, and I was asking basic health-related questions. Past medical history, surgical history, allergies, etc. At the end of the interview, the teen, looking kind of embarrassed, asked me, "How many holes do we have down there?" I answered, "Women have 3. Just then, the teen looks at her mum and explains, "See, Mum, I told you." And the mum looks confused and asks, "Are you sure it's 3? I tell her, yes, women have 3, vajayjay, urethra, butthole, and men have 2. The mother goes, "Men have 2? I was shocked. Long story short, I had to draw them a picture of female and male anatomy to drive the point home. They thought that women urinate from their hoo-has. I can see how the teen could be confused, but the mum was too. In college, I dated a 21-year-old Muslim girl who believed that sperm could rapidly swim up off the bedsheets, over her leg and down her hoo-ha, and through her cervix on their own like hungry, sentient parasites. Can you imagine if that crap was real and you had to swat and slap the splooge monsters to death off their faces and chests before the little B-words reached their targets? Also, you would be guaranteed to get pregnant from every hotel bed you ever laid in. And that statement is just making me think about that gross element of hotels, and no thank you. One of the standards that we have to teach in our state, Kentucky, is that men produce sperm for the entirety of their lives, whereas women have a finite number of eggs. Generally, this gets into PMS, menopause, and a few similar subjects. For contextual purposes, I'll try to outline the classroom. This is a 7th grade classroom, 13-year-olds. 50% are below the poverty line, 50% Caucasian, and 20% Hispanic. The rest are various other races. 100% male, as I was working with the males and another teacher was working with the females. So this particular child is a plump little boy. Really contemplative, too. You can see him looking down to the ground, pondering, and really working out something in his head every time he responds. So after I explain how older men can have babies, but older women cannot, he just asks, "So you're telling me an old wrinkly man can have a baby?" To which I affirm, yes. So the kid is just staring down, thinking for a while. After about a minute, he looks back up and says, "So if an old wrinkly man has a baby, does that mean the baby has wrinkles?" I honestly just about lost it. Then we had a conversation about how people being shot do not produce bullet-resistant babies. Also, every class for some reason responded with my question of, "What's the one way to not have a baby?" in the same gosh darn way. "You wear 3 rubbers." Like, what the heck? We were taught life skills by our religious teachers, and in this case, our middle-aged, Jesus-loving teacher. It was always going to be an awkward affair in a mixed-gender school, boisterous lads showing off to the girls giggling, etc. The lesson was moving along as planned, but it was getting a tad boring. Questions were being fired, but nothing we didn't already know. Then the teacher had a brainwave, giving everyone a small piece of paper and asking us to write an anonymous question if we wanted to know something but were too afraid to ask. Within seconds, half the class is scribbling away. The papers go into a box and are picked out one by one. "What is this strange buzzing wand my mum has?" Quite a tame one, and the teacher was able to reel off a vicar-friendly answer. But it got progressively uglier. What's a BJ? What's prostate massaging? What's felching? It's worth noting that this was around 1994, so the internet was not an option. The teacher was backed into a corner, armed only with a book and a very basic knowledge of the deed as a reproductive tool. Lots of stuttering ensued. Watching a middle-aged woman explain to the class the finer points of manual stimulation still makes me raise a smile. I'm a teacher, but not normally a life skills teacher. My state is abstinence-only education, and so most of the life skills is limited at best. This may explain a 9th grade class I had 3 years ago with 4 mothers in it. Anyway, one of my students was convinced that if you jumped up and down after you had done the deed, you wouldn't get pregnant. Without using any words that would make me blush, I told her unequivocally that she was wrong and to not try that at home. Then another student raised her hand and essentially asked about the pull-out method. She didn't know the terminology. I told her again that was not a really reliable method, especially with teenage boys. Then a third student asked about doing the deed when you're not ovulating. She actually asked, "What about having fun during some parts of the month and not others?" I explained that teenage girls may or may not have a real reliable cycle, and being even a day off the rhythm method could result in pregnancy. Finally, after towing the company line, the only foolproof method is abstinence, and in the absence of abstinence, take care of yourself, a girl in my class sighs and says, "Well, I will just keep doing sit-ups after doing the deed." I kid you not. And some of these girls were AP college preparatory students. The best one I heard was from the nurse at our school who was explaining all of the diseases you can get from the hoo-ha, BJs, and doing it in the butt. A girl in the class raised her hand and said, "So that's where crack babies come from, right?" And the nurse asked her, "What?" And the girl said, "Crack babies, you know, from doing it in the butt." You've got to love abstinence-only education in an overly religious state, teaching girls to hate their bodies and be ignorant at the same time. The most disconcerting thing I'd heard while teaching life skills was the notion that transmissible diseases are like a game of tag. I was asked numerous times that if one had acquired immunodeficiency syndrome and gave it to another person, does that mean they're cured? "Tag, you got herpes. Anyone care to take this HIV off me?" So I'm not a teacher for this subject, but my little sister was 13 and my brother had just gotten married. I mentioned to my sister that I thought it was weird that my brother is going to the same cabin as my father had for his honeymoon with my stepmom. My little sister said it wasn't weird because doing the deed is only for having babies, and since my brother didn't want kids for 5 years, they wouldn't be doing the deed, and that my dad was too old to have kids, so they also never did the deed. Explaining to her that there are more reasons for doing the deed was awkward. Also, my sister-in-law, until she was 16, thought that doing the deed meant you laid side by side and the sperm crawled out of the guy's belly button and into the girl's belly button. We were all homeschooled and Christian. In case anyone's wondering, my mum never gave us any kind of growing up talk. No birds and bees, no puberty, nothing. She did put a copy of The Care and Keeping of You under my door with a note saying I should read it. It is an American Girl Company book on your changing body. Bras appeared in my drawers, but nothing was ever said. There was a steady supply of sanitary products, but I never even told her I got my period, I just figured it out. So yeah, unless you looked it up yourself, you knew nothing. I used to go to a really religious school. The girls there believed that no one actually enjoys doing the deed, it's just the media telling you do. My friend once had a Chinese exchange for uni, and she had to look after him. In the first month, it was discovered that he knew nothing about doing the deed or how babies were made. 19 years old, by the way. My friend taught him all of this during his exchange. Anyone who doesn't know, China's culture is that adult fun and relationships come after education and the establishment of your career. The schools don't teach it, and there are stories of kids going out and parents moving them over provinces to stop them dating so they can focus on schoolwork. Don't any of these hyper-religious folks grow up on farms? I ask because, it's hard to be so misinformed about doing the deed when you're breeding animals. My girlfriend is a pharmacist and has told me some good ones. She had a girl complain about her birth control falling out, and found out that she'd been sticking the pills up her hoo-ha. Also, she had several that ran out of pills early and needed to be told that only she takes them, not her and her boyfriend. And of course, she's had a few girls get pregnant and find out that you're supposed to take the pills every day, not just when you do the deed. Medical professionals. What's the craziest DIY treatment you've seen a patient attempt? I had a guy come in for coughing and shortness of breath for the past few months. His lungs sounded like absolute crap. Got a chest x-ray that looked horrible, so I did a CT scan. Radiologist called it the worst case of necrotizing pneumonia he'd ever seen. The guy had like a 15% functional lung tissue left. The patient then mentioned things had been worse after he started using a new breath freshener spray. He whipped out one of those blunt effects concentrated air freshener bottles supposed to cover up green herb smell. Labeled not for internal use. Apparently he'd been using it like Banaka spray and had already gone through 3 bottles. Paramedic here once had to explain to a family that putting lemon juice in the eyes of an unconscious patient isn't an approved treatment method. And no, it didn't work. It was an interesting moment when I had to explain why his eyes hurt, though. Smelling salts, same logic applied for seeing acids. Anesthesiologist here, we had a patient come in for I&D of bilateral deltoid abscesses. He apparently had thoughts of being a bodybuilder, but instead of lifting weights or knowing someone who could hook him up with some quality roids, he decided to bulk up using some protein powder at GNC, and mixing it with water, drawing it into a syringe, and injecting the 20 to 40 cc's directly into the muscle. If bulk was what he was going for, it definitely worked, temporarily. A rip-roaring localized infection makes you look pretty swole. They also got almost a liter of pus mixed with liquefied protein powder out of each deltoid. This also wasn't the first time he had been in for this problem. That last line kills me. Try it once, shame on you. Try it more than once, what the frick are you doing with your life? My dad had an abscess on his face. It was huge, about the size of a golf ball and horribly red. It kept getting bigger. My mum, a nurse, kept telling him to go to the doctor, but my dad was a ridiculous cheapskate. One day when she was gone, we noticed a big whitehead had formed on the abscess, and it was apparently ready to pop. My dad went out to the garage, got his shop vac, placed it over the whitehead, and proceeded to suck out the abscess. It worked surprisingly well and healed up after that nicely. Mum was still furious, though. It's a pity these medical stories tend to do quite well on the channel, because these are also the ones that leave the narrator dry heaving over the side of his recording setup. This was the first one of the day to do so, although the next one admittedly took me even further. If I've learned anything from reading the stories here, it's that some people, particularly men, will tolerate almost any amount of pain to avoid a doctor seeing whatever stupid crap they've done to themselves. This is no exception. I once spoke to a paramedic who went out to a man at 2 a.m. who had excruciating pain down below. The poor organ was wrapped tightly in soaking bandages, and underneath was a blackened member with large pus-filled holes in it. The man eventually admitted that he'd shoved a chicken bone, a clean one, whatever that means, down his pee-pee hole for pleasure. Predictably enough, he couldn't get it out, and being too embarrassed to go to the doctor, he had left it until he was in so much pain he couldn't walk, both from the rotted eggplant and the fact that he hadn't been able to urinate for days. Apparently, you couldn't actually see the bone once the wound was clean, and although not an expert, my friend couldn't imagine that what was left was salvageable. In nursing school, while I was on clinical rotation in urology, there was a man who ended up having his member removed. It turned out he had an infection brewing for quite a while and thought the best course of action was placing a sock over it in the hope that it would heal. He was generally confused and upset as to why this didn't work to heal the issue. One of my first clinic patients was a guy who was injecting a mixture of testosterone, human growth hormone, sesame oil, and sunflower oil into the base of his member as a DIY enlargement therapy. Well, it got infected, so he ended up going to the ED for incision and drainage. I saw him as a post-ED visit, and at the time, he figured that he shouldn't be injecting things into his eggplant while it was healing, so instead he was injecting his oil and sketchy hormones off the internet concoction everywhere else into his body. Arms, legs, butt, shoulders, etc., because he figured it would still have some effect.
Judging by the rest of these stories, some men are capable of committing atrocious, heinous acts of terror on their own members.
There's a myth that lowering someone's core temperature will save them from an opiate overdose. As a result, many first responders have arrived on scenes to find friends or fellow users inserting ice into someone's butt. Sometimes they don't have ice though, which leads to people getting pretty inventive. Popsicles, frozen hot dogs, my personal favorite, which regrettably I didn't witness myself, it was told to me by another medic, was a bag of frozen French fries. Cold will do nothing to help someone who is overdosing on smack or other opiates. What they need is respiratory support, oxygen or artificial ventilation, and naloxone, Narcan. If you're a user or know one and somebody ODs, call 911, perform mouth-to-mouth, and give Narcan if you have it, but leave the popsicles in the freezer. I work in dental and years ago had a patient attempt to superglue her front teeth back on after they broke in half. She screwed up and ended up gluing the chunk to her upper lip. I had a dental patient with a dead front tooth that had turned black, so she painted it with white nail polish daily. This happened when I was still a med student doing a rotation in the ED. The patient comes in and is pretty vague about his actual complaint, something about head pain, but he looks just fine sitting, waiting to be seen. When I finally get to see him and ask what actually happened, he removes the hat he was wearing and a chunk of skin about the size of my hand literally flaps off his skull. This man managed to basically scalp himself, and apparently it had been like that for 3 days. According to him, it was caused by falling in his bathroom and hitting his head on the toilet. He had been previously duct taping it down or using the hat to hold the skin on, but it wasn't sticking well, and that's when his wife convinced him to come to the hospital. Pharmacist here, worked in a shop where a woman asked for some advice about a potential UTI or STI. Told me she had bathed her hoo-ha in bleach for 5 minutes to try and kill any bacteria. Miraculously, she hadn't done any lasting damage. An old lady told me the rain hurt her arthritis. That's reasonable. She also swore that dog spit had healing properties, so she let her dogs lick her feet when she felt it coming on. She then wanted to show me a video of said dogs licking said feet. I swiftly and politely declined. Adult patient had gas and poked a hole in his belly button with basically a knitting needle to release it. It didn't work. He actually came in for the ensuing infection in his belly button. Oh God. I don't know what age I was before I came to the conclusion that poking holes in my body's organs was a bad idea, but it was at least a decade earlier in my life than this gentleman. The young narrator was a moron, so what does it make this man? I work in oncology pharmacy. I had a patient die of totally treatable chest cancer because they decided to treat it with mistletoe instead of chemo, all because Suzanne Summers did. Yeah, the Thighmaster lady. Don't take medical advice from the Thighmaster lady. The most heartbreaking thing I've seen is a desperate husband bring his wife in at death's door. They were young with 2 kids under 10. She had been diagnosed with breast cancer and didn't like what her oncologist was telling her. To be fair, that crap is terrifying. She then left the UK, so all of the chemo and surgery that was free at the point of access, and followed the alternative practices recommended by some witch doctor in her own country. By the time her husband dragged her back, she was too far gone. Had spread to too many organs, trouble with breathing, groggy, seizures from brain mets. I work in ED. I don't know how oncologists and palliative care teams do what they do. Of all the horrible traumas I've dealt with, this is one of the most upsetting cases I've ever picked up. A little late to this thread, but I have a weird one. A patient was told by her doc that she had low magnesium and should consider supplements. Not uncommon. Instead of getting MG supplements, she ate an entire tub of homeopathic volcanic ash and completely destroyed her electrolyte imbalance and ended up in ICU. We admitted her as a pharmaceutical overdose, so poison control automatically follows up with you. It was hard to explain to them. It was probably naturopathic, not homeopathic. I don't know enough about specific differences. Think of a tub of protein powder, but volcanic ash. Her husband brought it in for the poison control report. You were supposed to mix in a scoop with water for the health benefits. She ate the whole tub and had a seizure and wrecked her kidneys. The activated charcoal and volcanic ash vomit that was all over her when she came from emergency was a B word to clean up. A mentally delayed woman came in septic to the ED. We did x-rays, blood cultures, urine cultures, the works. Finally found this weird image on her pelvis film, and we had the gyn come in to do a pelvic exam. They pulled out this blob with bones in it. Y'all, I swear to God, it was a decomposing frog. She put it in her hoo-ha for safekeeping. She got toxic shock syndrome from a frog.
Ribbited for her pleasure.
My boss is a nurse practitioner. I asked her what the worst thing she had witnessed was. She continued on to tell the story of a man who had stapled his ball bag together onto his body after slipping with the razor. He had had it that way for days, metal holding his poor testes in place, infected and gross as you'd expect, before he came in to a professional. Later admitted his ex had attempted to castrate him. The organs lived, never fear. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. A guy came into the ED because his leg was swollen. I'm talking like twice the size of his other leg. It turned out that his 4th and 5th toes were getting caught on his sock, which to be fair sounds kind of annoying. So he cut them the frick off with scissors. And then, surprise, it got infected. And he waited, and that's how he lost his entire fricking leg. Had a young teenager with sickle cell disease who had been in the hospital for around a week, already who decided to manage his pain himself. This was a few years ago, but I caught him pretending to take his meds. He would cock his head back and gesture that the pill went into his mouth, but really he either kept it in his hand or he threw the pill behind his back and landed somewhere in his bed. He was also quite a talker, which I then assumed was a tactic to try and distract me. I kept seeing his odd behavior and caught him doing this 2 to 3 times by the middle of the shift, so I was definitely onto him. He had a PICC line, which is essentially a long IV where the tubing goes all the way to your heart, in his left arm. And I noticed it was quite a bit more swollen compared to his other arm. Sometimes clots can happen in PICC lines, so that was my biggest concern at first. But the line was drawing blood fine, so I knew it wasn't clotted off. I told the doc, then I drew blood from his PICC line and sent it down to the lab to be cultured to see if there was any bacteria. Lo and behold, it came back positive for bacteria that's commonly found in tap water, and usually not a source of infection in the infected PICC lines. Fast forward a few hours later, he confessed that with any oral medication, pill form, he can slip by the nurses, he saved for later in order to crush it up himself to try to dissolve it with sink water in the bathroom. Every room had a private bathroom, so he could inject it in himself via his PICC line. Having once seen a commercial that oatmeal can lower cholesterol, a patient started having chest pains and tried to resolve it with a bowl of oatmeal. We had a guy come in with an abscess on his right thumb. When I asked him what happened to his hand, he told me about his recent deep-sea fishing trip and was given the responsibility of cutting the fish with an open wound in his hand. A sliver of fish got in there and became infected as it healed. So this guy gets the bright idea of doing a little DIY wound drainage by grabbing his pocket knife and cutting it open again, leading to greater infection. Yep, I also had a smack addict cut her thumb on her broken smack pipe. The thumb was incredibly infected. She grew tired of waiting for the hand surgeon to arrive. She was in the operating room with another patient, so she bit her finger to release the pus. Then she left the hospital, cursing the staff the whole time because we're useless, etc. As a child, I got really bad sunburn. The person looking after me coated my sunburn in baby oil to help it heal and sent me back out into the sun. I realized when I was older why my mum went nuts. I have a Jamie Oliver recipe that directs me to do the same thing midway through roasting a chicken. My mater would have literally murdered if someone did that to one of her kids. Crackling, crispy skin in 30 minutes. My mom once melted Vicks Vapor Rub into my tea because she thought that would help my cold. It didn't help my cold. I know people who would do this, more than one of them. They swear by Vicks Vapor Rub and kinda treat it like a cure-all. My neighbor came over to borrow a chainsaw. I noticed he had a thick bandage around his arm and asked him what happened. He said he fell out of a tree last week and cut his arm. I asked if he got stitches and he said he just wrapped it up and his family was praying over it. About 4 days later, I saw his wife, and she said he was really sick and may have the flu. Came to find out he had septicemia and was dying. He died a week later of kidney failure and sepsis. Putting an adult fun toy up the butt to better reach another, larger toy. Patient used to get hard-ons in class and it embarrassed him so much that he used rubber bands to prevent it. Ended up killing the tissue in his eggplant and now he needs a catheter for life. A man who'd accidentally sliced his leg open at his workplace. He obviously figured that as surgeons use staples to close wounds, he'd cut out the trip to the hospital and DIY it, with an ordinary desk stapler. Arrived in ED with a pus-filled wound with the odd discolored staple hanging off it some days later. I am not a medical professional, but my father-in-law had severe skin cancer. He basically had an open sore on his back for several years that bled and bled. We never knew about it until one day we saw a pancake-sized crater through his shirt. Went to the hospital finally, and they basically said he had cancer through his entire body at this point. His response was that he thought it was a cut that wouldn't heal and put gauze and neosporin on it. Since folks are curious, yes, he is still alive, but they didn't give him much time left. They managed to treat the wound, but the cancer spread into his organs and bones. The sad part is it could have been avoided if he just went to a doctor years prior. But that is unfortunately the common mindset in a lot of older folks. White bread soaked in milk placed on an armpit abscess to draw out the infection. They needed an IND and a couple of weeks of IV antibiotics by the time they got to us. Either that or the guy who crashed his motorbike, scraped his leg all to heck, and then decided the best course of action was to self-cauterize it on the tailpipe. Wow, stupid or not, the tailpipe guy had a set of brass ones on him. When I worked in the ER, my colleague had to see a guy with an ear problem. He had something stuck in his ear and had been trying to get it out. This wasn't a new thing, he had been trying for some time. Turns out he'd completely removed his tympanic membrane, and the bits that were stuck in his ear and that he was trying to pick out with cotton buds and hair clips were his ossicles. Enjoy! Had a patient come into the ER with a makeshift bandage on his shin. He'd fallen on rocks while hiking and had left a 3-inch long, half-inch deep gash in his leg. I go to pull the bandage off, and as I'm peeling it away, I notice the skin is completely black, and there's dark chunks of fungus falling out of the wound. It looked necrotic, like it had been left alone for a week. I look at this guy like he's crazy as he tells me the wound is only a few hours old. He's pretty proud as he explains that he created a makeshift poultice by chewing up leaves and moss, mixing it with river mud, and stuffing it into his leg. That's what all the black mossy stuff was. Hint: don't do this. My grandpa thought a leg discrepancy was causing my back pain, which was causing spasms. He put several pieces of cardboard in my shoes to try and even out my legs, which were already even. He also thinks black beans cure everything. My dad thought those pesky spasms were a pinched nerve, so he'd take me to the chiropractor, his girlfriend, to get my neck cracked whenever it happened. Seizures, people. They were seizures. My stepfather thought he had a boil of some sort on his arm a few years ago. So he did what any middle-aged dad would do, cut the sucker open and poured hydrogen peroxide on it. Turns out it wasn't a boil but a form of skin cancer. Also turns out that hydrogen peroxide doesn't do much to help with melanoma. After a lot of one-sided discourse, he went to the doctor to get it checked and treated. He's now cancer-free. Good God, how is this man one of the most sensible people in this entire grouping? I'll take this as an absolute win over the many, many men in the earlier stories who no longer have usable reproductive organs. When I was an internal medicine resident, I came across a very nice 50-year-old Dominican lady. She was very well-mannered, but one could tell she was not the sharpest tool in the shed. As I was prepping her chart for our first visit, I noticed she'd been seen by every single digestive disease MD in our hospital system. Not only that, she had had every single procedure in the book, ranging from endoscopies up both holes and culminating in an exploratory laparotomy. You're opened up to basically look inside you when we have no clue what's going on. All of this because for years she'd had one single complaint. She reported severe gnawing pain in her stomach. At this point I should mention she was Spanish-speaking only. Not only that, she had a very heavy Dominican accent, and I was the first Hispanic doctor to ever see her. My first language is Spanish, and even I had difficulty understanding her. So she comes in, and after exchanging some first-time pleasantries, I politely ask her how she's doing. Sure enough, although she was smiling and said she felt well, she pointed at her belly and said, "It was biting again," and asked for cream to kill it. At this point, I got intrigued. Her medication list only mentioned a cream used for herpes breakthroughs. The previous fellow only mentioned in his note that in every single visit, she only asked for the cream and nothing else. When I asked her what she meant by the biting and what she intended to do with the cream, she very calmly tells me she intended to stick the cream up her butt in order to kill the bird living inside her. After delving more deeply into her story, it turns out she didn't have a medical condition. Ever since she was a little girl, she believed that after eating a whole quail egg, the bird had spawned inside her and gnawed away in her insides whenever she was hungry. After a short visit to psych, she was diagnosed with a somatic-type delusional disorder. No amount of medication or psychotherapy will cure her, but she was still a fully functional mother of two who paid her taxes and had part-time jobs. I reached out to every digestive disease doctor in our hospital system once more to make sure she never receives an inappropriate invasive intervention. I've been following her for 3 years now, and she's happy as one can be, considering she has a bird living inside of her. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories, or if you want some vibey music to put on in the background, check out easymode. If you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot. Everything linked in the description.